judge me, feel the regret. I look back and I get upset. Who the hell was that guy? I wanna be by your side. I miss everything. I miss everything.
Hello.
Hey, nice to see you guys.
You
Good
again,
to see
man.
you, man. Yeah.
Awesome. How you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good. How are you guys?
Oh, we're great, man.
Good,
We're great.
good,
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Excited to talk about some movies with you today.
Yeah,
Some more of your.
You sure this isn't this isn't starting to bore the shit out of you? I
Oh,
think you're gonna want to move on to another filmmaker.
No, we're enjoying every
Yeah,
moment.
yeah. It's been a good escape from the world interviewing you.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's for me too. So I really enjoy it. So yeah.
We're like living in the world of all your films for like the last
Yeah.
month or two.
It's
So
always fun. Yeah.
it's always fun to do that, and your movies are so like, I mean, even categorically, like just so different. So it's like, it's not always the same mood like it is with some
Yeah,
people. Like
yeah,
every
yeah.
movie of yours, like just
Yeah, yeah,
transcends all that because you have such a wide variety of films
Yeah.
and your approach
Cool.
to each film.
Yeah. What's the T-shirt? I have to ask.
Oh, it's Fade to Black.
Oh,
nice.
nice. Oh, such
Wait, yeah. I mean, it's funny because it's like I actually read. I belong to this Facebook page, really nerdy Facebook page. That's all movie tie-ins. And I don't know if they were popular when you were kids, but like actually they were more popular when I was a kid because it's like pre-VCR. So like if you couldn't get in to see like an R-rated movie, there was usually a novelization, like a paperback novelization of like The Omen or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So if you couldn't get in, you would go to like, the drugstore or Walgreens or whatever, and you'd get like so you could read all the gore and everything that you couldn't see. So I grew up with these like movie tie-ins as kind of like a way to get to see the movie before you could see the movie, right? And I had the paperback for Fade to Black
nice.
before I even saw the movie. And it's funny, I think the paperback, because they used to hire people to adapt the screenplays into novels. That's what they would do.
Yeah, that was
Todd
a big
Strasser
thing,
made
yeah.
like all his money doing that in the 90s.
We collect a lot of movie novelizations.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. So then you know what I'm talking about. I just thought the Fade to Black novel was actually so much more interesting in a way because it really got into kind of the nitty-gritty of being a geek. Like before it all goes haywire,
Yeah.
they spend a lot of time describing. It's really not in the movie. They spend a lot of time describing Eric Binford's sort of like regimen of how he like combs through the TV guide and circles and he schedules his whole life so he can catch all the different movies. And I totally like related to that, when I was a kid. So anyway, yeah. So a friend of mine's a huge Fade to Black fan and sent me the shirt.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I do love those novelizations because like a lot of those deleted scenes end up in there, and
They
like,
do go more into things. Like we have the one for the Macaulay Culkin movie, The Good Son.
and it's like really rare.
It goes into more about why he's an evil child.
And there's a whole alternate ending, which is
right.
Good. So yeah,
I noticed in the Wild Things 2 DVD, there's like a behind the scenes segment where you're wearing like a Jacob's Ladder T-shirt.
Oh yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. I think I still have that. My wife is quick to point out that basically my wardrobe hasn't changed in like 30 years. It was funny. I was at a restaurant in LA. My wife and I were having lunch, and I happened to be wearing the Jacob's Ladder shirt. And I remember I looked over, and Adrian Lyne was at the other table, and he was kind of seeing that I had the shirt on. I don't think he thought. I don't know if he thought I was crew or whatever, but it was kind of weird that I had my Jacob's Ladder shirt, and the director was right there.
good coincidence.
But anyway, yeah. So, how's the weather where you guys are?
Like 100 degrees.
It's boiling.
Yeah,
Nashville,
humid.
Yeah.
I'm like I said, I'm in Portland, and it's been like real. I mean, this week is more normal, like in the mid 80s, but it has been like, in the hundreds up here, which I can't understand. So sucks. Well, I hope you guys you're in a cool spot.
Yeah.
Speaking of bleakness, no, I'm kidding. Drone Wars.
Oh man, yeah.
We obviously lots of visual effects, lots of TV actors and things like that. I know Namel, he's a huge TV actor. He was one of the stars of that movie. I just like the idea how it's kind of the drone warfare gone wrong. How did you jump into that project and how'd that come about?
Yeah, that was kind of like that was just another one of those circumstances where there was a job and I was really champing at the bit to make another movie. I can't remember what was right before that, or how much time had transpired between that. I think I probably had done the Fear Force 5. Yeah, I think I had done the Fear Force 5 web show prior to that. But yeah, I think someone, oh, I know what happened. There was one of the producers, the line producer from Mega Shark, has sort of graduated to being like a bigger producer of a lot of these, sort of low budget sci-fi channel-esque kind of movies. And so he had remembered our working experience on Mega Shark and just knew I could, handle the subject in the time. Again, it was one of those deals which I think it was another one of these 14-day, like 15-day schedules. So I think that's how it happened. Is he recommended me for the job. I went in and did it, and it was basically one of those. It's happened a couple of times. I don't know if it's really an ego thing or whether it's just a necessary part of my, like every director. I'm sure you guys identify with this. Like if you don't write the script, there's a process before you make the movie where you sort of have to like mate with the material if you're gonna direct it. Like it can't just be like, oh yeah, here's the instructions for the movie, now I'm gonna do it. Like I feel like there needs to be some sort of like almost like appropriation, like, okay, I believe in this as if I wrote this. So usually there's like what they call a director's polish, which is an uncredited sort of it's sort of like a pass where you get in there and just sort of, even if it's just like fixing typos or switching locations, like this location we can't get, but we'll put it here. Like even if it's just little things like that, it's a way of sort of literally getting your hands on it, so you feel like, okay, yeah, now I can sort of direct this. And in most circumstances, if the script is great, then I don't really do much of anything. It's just very like light, nothing. But in the case of Drone Wars, and did we talk about Blast Vegas already? I'm losing track of.
We touched on. I remember you saying you had to do like one of those rewrites on the script, and you changed it to where.
So that's right. So I apologize. So it was a similar circumstance to that, in that the script was kind of like, it was kind of like overly complicated, and I wasn't like I was reading and I was like, I don't really understand what's going on. So I felt like if I'm going to direct this thing, I gotta sort of have it at least make sense to me. So I did an uncredited kind of overhaul of that script too, just to kind of just make it a little clearer for me. But I think the issue with that movie is that, and that's a problem with a lot of sort of these low budget sci-fi channel movies, is that they really don't have the infrastructure to support the story that they're trying to tell. Like with Mega Shark, I knew from the beginning it was going to be like a 20-cent movie. So, playing into the silliness of it was was my sort of solution to that, right? But with Drone Wars, it's effectively almost a humorless movie. It's like trying to just be a straight ahead, like this is an invasion of Earth, and it's all very, like you said, it's like bleak, like this is and so the issue is, okay, well, if you're going to do Independence Day, or actually Independence Day has a lot of humor, but if you're going to do, Battle Los Angeles or whatever, you at least have to be able to deliver on the promise of these drones, right? And as what they did was they ended up, a lot of these companies, they farm out all the CGI to they outsource the CGI wherever they can find it. And I don't know if it was in India or it was somewhere in the South Pacific. And this has nothing to do with the countries, because there's talented effects artists everywhere in the world. But it's just a product of cheap filmmaking. They try to find the cheapest, and in most cases the most inexperienced people to deliver for the budget. And so the effects come back and they're like, like some of them are okay, and then some of them are like really bad, depending on like who got the chance to animate whatever thing. And I had really gone through the trouble of, I kind of went a step further. I did animatics, my own personal animatics for each effect shot. So like anytime, and what I would do is like most of it's just plates. So it's like, Corin Nemec going, I'm running and I see so I would basically go into premiere and do my own little like paper green screen. Like I would animate where the ship comes in and when it's supposed to fire and when it's supposed to exit. And I really like, it wasn't even like animatics outside of the movie. It's like, here it is, here's the template, here's the shot. And all you have to do is basically do a better version of what I just did. And even with that, like effects would come back and they'd be coming in the wrong direction or the scale was wrong, and so I was just kind of like, at a certain point, I was like, all right, I can't, it's hard for me to control that because I can't physically do the effect. Actually, at one point, I was kind of like toying with the producers. They would never go for it. Nobody ever goes for this anymore. I was saying, why don't we just do like miniatures? Like I could like personally build like a cool drone model and put that up on a green screen and do some sort of like, my own like bogus motion control things. And they would probably be better than what's in there. So, but nobody like believes in that shit anymore. So they're just like, no, it's all CGI, whatever. So yeah, those are the things I look at. I'm like, like that doesn't help. I did have a chance to put in some people into the movie that I like. I don't know if you recognize, like the guy who plays, they put his name, they didn't put his name in the credits. They fucked that up. The guy that was in The Big Empty, the guy who played Peter, he was the husband in The Big Empty, who has, the affair, not the affair, but actually is the social worker who's, with the old man. So he plays the Doc character, who ends up like, it's a trap, and he gets shot and all that. Mm-hmm. And that was really like an opportunity for me to just go, okay, like who's an actor I like that I can just stick in and we can have fun. Rob. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
You've been in a couple of your other projects too.
Yeah. He was in the Brady Bunch thing too.
Show up like in your projects. They sneak in there. That's awesome.
Yeah, and Rob Beckwith, for example, he's the he's the sheriff in Fear Force 5, and he's in he's in Some Guy Who Kills People. He's the coroner that talking about the samurai sword. He's in the end. Right. And I put him in there as this like, the cannibal, like the cannibal scene, that's him, in that scene, which was another, by the way, that was another one of these, that movie had a lot of like padding scenes where I have to go back and write these whole scenes because again, I was trying to make it fast because it was cheap. And then it was like, well, we need 15 more minutes of movie. So I kept like, and Verona Blue, who is one of the gang, one of the like sort of like Mad Max gang. She's the kind of the mall in the gang of renegades, and she was also in Fear Force 5. And so I try to use the people that I like, which is typical, like I'm sure you guys do too. Like you work with somebody and you're like, I want to work with. It's more fun, if you can do it.
Of course. And it's hearing you talk about a lot of the movies you've done. There's like the formatting is different than a normal like normal. Yeah, what's normal, right? But like you have to come at it with like, wow, now I got to do these padding scenes, which you'd never have in other types of movies. Like when you're working with a network like that, and
you have to be more creative. Yeah,
in a way. And it's not, and sometimes it's not even laid out in front of you like it usually is. You're just jumping right into it.
Yeah.
And it's just so interesting.
Like there's like, as a director, like there's some movies, the studios, you can tell really direct a movie, like all those Marvel movies, but like you're the kind of director who really has to go in there and really has to help make the movie better and really has to work.
And then you're coming in there and wearing so many
creative.
You're wearing so many hats. And then John R. Leonetti, he's a famous cinematographer, obviously, but he's also directed a few movies. And a lot of the movies he does, like they have really short time periods to film, like a lot of them. And I think it's a testament to like a masterful filmmaker to be able to jump in there and kind of
in such a limited time,
and you're pulling all the strings, and it makes me appreciate
like hearing like all that you have had to do in a lot of these movies that a lot of directors don't even have to worry about or don't even have to.
I mean, you're going on premiere and then
doing your
right. Well, I mean, you as filmmakers, you guys appreciate that. You're right, and it's a really good point to make for those who are listening that don't know, because you're right. When the budgets get big. Or not even that big, but like even what the studios consider a low budget movie, which is like a $10 million movie. You have like everything is very, very specialized, and you're kind of forced to stay in your lane as a director, as sort of like describe what a director does. And I think the upside of doing some of these low budget movies, even though they have a lot of problems, as I've whined about, is that you get to be much more hands-on as a filmmaker. And I try to, I think I may even have said this to you guys. It's like, like when I'm teaching the students, even if they're like, well, I want to be a producer, or I want to be a DP or whatever, I really try to say that it's important in the beginning to be like a filmmaker first, right? Like to really understand like the whole thing. It just gives you, particularly if you're going to be in a sort of any kind of lead position like a director, it gives you that ability to, okay, shit, now I've got to like, okay, we're short, there's no writer, so I got to write a scene. Well, if you don't know how to write, then you're kind of stuck, having to find somebody. If you want to like do your animatics or be very specific or draw storyboards, like all those skills are things that you can either defer to somebody or hire somebody. But I think there's it's a much more personal experience, whatever the movie turns out to be. I think you maybe feel the hand of the filmmaker a little bit more deliberately. I was watching that Larry Cohen. There was a documentary on Larry Cohen. Did you guys see that one? King Cohen. It was a documentary not a few years ago called King Cohen, and it was just tracking Larry Cohen's career. And you guys know Larry Cohen, right? Do you know what?
It's Alive, and
that's right, exactly. And Q, the Winged Serpent, and the stuff, and all that stuff. And he started in kind of like blaxploitation cinema, and remained very much an independent filmmaker. And they were interviewing, they had like Scorsese in there commenting on it and on him. And one of the things that Scorsese said is that he kind of identified it as like handmade, like you get the feel they're like handmade films. And that really is to your point about like, it's a different quality when you're dealing with a smaller budget, small crew, fewer fingers are actually on the movie. And the bigger, once you get into these like big Marvel things, it's like 8 billion people, so you get a much more, I think in some cases, depending on the strength of the director, you get a much more impersonal sort of corporate product as opposed to a personal product. So I think that is one of the accidental benefits of those kind of small movies, is that you can get your fingers on them, like for better or worse, it's more of your movie than maybe it would be if it was like a bigger budget.
So like any fun stories from the Drone Wars set? I mean,
yeah, I mean, it's funny, every once in a while, very rarely, there is a circumstance where you have an actor who is like, it's not, you're not getting along, and for whatever reason, I got into it with Corin Nemec like on the first day, and I think what happened was, and this is another thing that I've run into when I do these kinds of movies for hire, is that unfortunately there are a lot of filmmakers who, I think this is regardless of budget, there are a lot of bullshit artists out there who say, I'm a director, and then they go in there and they kind of fuck it up. They either they shoot it wrong, or they don't make their days, or they whatever. And every time you're dealing in that world, it's almost like a landlord who has been fucked over by a client. The producers are always looking at you like, yeah, you say you know what you're doing, but are you just a bullshit artist kind of thing? And I remember I was setting up a shot in Drone Wars, and Corin Nemec said, "Oh, that's not going to cut." Like he said that to me, because that's not going to cut. And he did it with his real sort of like you don't know what you're doing, kid. Like, and I'm like, I've already been in the business like 25 years, and I'm an editor, right? So it's like, again, to your point, like I know how to edit. It's not like I don't know what editing is, right? So he's like, yeah, it's not going to cut. And I think it probably came from experiences where he worked with a younger, inexperienced director who then the film didn't come together the right way. So I was trying to tell him, like, hey, like, just indulge me. I'm an editor. I know how it's going to go together. And he was like, very confrontational about like, no, it's not going to cut. And I started to take that very personally, you know? And so there's almost this moment where, I said, look, it'll be fine. And then he muttered something under his breath. I said, what did you say? And it was like one of those, like, it was almost like high school, it was like one of those kind of things where, and I realized right away that, oh shit, this is like the first day. And now this guy is going to be like, we're going to be at like, like this, and which just, I can't stand that kind of confrontation. It makes me, and it's so uncomfortable, so I kind of did, I kind of realized, and he was the kind of personality that was like never going to accept like blame. So I just pulled like a kind of a bubblegum sort of reverse psychology thing where I went to him and I said, oh man, I'm so sorry. I'm having a bad day, and you're right and I'm wrong. It was one of those kind of things.
Yeah.
And then he was like, fine, and maybe he was having a bad day, who knows? But yeah, I mean, other than that, it was, it was a pretty, it was okay. There were a couple of things that were like real difficult things. Like I was always shooting like 8 or 9 pages, sometimes up to 11 pages of script a day. And the problem with that movie is that it's all like running around stuff. So everything is complicated. And so everything required more stunts and more setups and more, like I had a lot of air rams blowing stuff. And, it's just like, even though it's a small movie, there's a lot of like gags and stuff. So it was much harder to do. And in one circumstance, the producer, the one that had hired me, said, oh, we got to add 4 more pages to your day today. So now you'll be shooting 14 pages today. And I was like, what the fuck is, and he said, because the DIT, and I always forget exactly, it was digital imaging technician, but it's the you guys know what this is. It's like when you're shooting on digital cards, there's somebody who's dedicated to dumping or transferring, the material to several drives so that it's backed up, and then they wipe the card and they put it back in the camera so you can shoot. And as you can see where this is going, basically somebody fucked up and like wiped the card, like basically a half day's worth of shooting, just erased it. And so instead of them going, well, I guess we're going to have to like file an insurance claim and add half a day, they were just like, no, we're just going to like pile it on. We're just going to pile it on to the 11 pages. So those 4 pages that got accidentally destroyed, you've got to do that today too. And I remember just like, that was like one of those moments where like I blew my top. I was like, you got to be fucking kidding me. This isn't, I'm not, I'm already killing myself to make 11 pages look like anything. And now you're adding 4 more pages because somebody, so it wasn't the most, it wasn't the most enjoyable experience. But what did make it, again, like what made the difference, the times that I had fun was when I was able to bring those actors that I liked into the equation, because then it's like, okay, and now I have my friends around me and we can sort of play, that's really what it is,
Heck yeah.
To that point though, I mean, finally, I'm sorry to kind of beat a dead horse with this thing, but every movie that I've done, including something like Drone Wars, even though I didn't, write it to begin with, there's a ton of those movies that I love, that just like with 666 The Child, like there's a million alien invasion movies that I love. So then, or even like post-apocalyptic movies, right? Because it's like the world is destroyed. So like I can always like, grab that from that, like that place where I love all those movies. And then it doesn't matter whether I'm grabbing from, like, for example, like the apartment that Corin Nemec lives in is like, I showed my production designer and my cinematographer images from The Last Man on Earth with Vincent Price, because I always remembered in his sort of end of the world scenario, he's got like, his apartment is like crisscrossed with all of these like the spider web of like electrical cables and stuff. Like it's like everything is jerry rigged, like generators and also all the windows are boarded up, and so like you have all these like weird sort of light and shadow coming through because he's boarded up his windows against the vampires, and I said, let's use that, as sort of like the basis for his apartment. And if you look at that, it's the same thing. It's like the cords and the boards, and so there's always something that I can like
Draw
kind
from.
of draw from. That's a love. That's a genuine love, even if even though the people that were making the movie were like, let's make this thing because we'll make some money or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's sort of on you as a filmmaker, if you can, to just like pull. It's like an actor. You try to pull the thing that's real out, regardless of what you're doing. So yeah, even though I don't have like this, like, oh, Drone Wars was like my fondest memory, when I think about it, I'm constantly like using, what I love to try to make it better if I can.
Yeah, that's yeah. I like
So
that.
like even the cannibal scene is like that was like an opportunity because we were short. So I was like, okay, well, there's no cannibals in the movie, but it makes sense that there probably would be in a world, gone wrong. So I'll get to do my zombie cannibal bit, which I had never done before. I never made a zombie movie per se. So I was like, all right, I'll just do that, like that'll be fun. And I'll put my, my friend with an axe in it, and so, so anyway, sorry.
It's fun to bring that stuff in there, and I like the idea, like, because I know we're the same way. Like, whatever you enjoy in a movie, what speaks to you.
It's always fun to
especially
stuff you've seen in other places and kind of do your own spin on it. Yeah,
even if it's just like a notion of something,
or
like
a line of dialogue,
why somebody does a certain thing, why certain artistic choices. So that's always fun. And then like someone like you who grew up in the 70s and the 80s, you have a lot of amazing films that you grew up with to draw from. I mean, that's just like, that's when cinema really just took off in such a different way, and so that's awesome. You have the right influences. So
I can't. You're absolutely right about that. I mean, I was lucky, even though I feel like I should have been born, like I said, like 10 or 20 years earlier, so that I could have been making movies in the 70s and 80s as opposed to making them in the 90s and 2000s. At least I was, I was able to experience those movies when they came out. And there are certain, like now when I look at, like even in the summer, like a time like this where there's supposed to be like, this is where all like you would wait all year for like the summer movies, right? And I forget now. You kind of just took it for granted, like, because in the 80s the summer movies were like crazy, like how many and the variety, and you just every week would be something interesting. And so it was a good time. It was definitely a good time to grow up. And you're right, it's funny you mentioned that, because I'm putting a polish on a script I hope to do soon. And you're right about the dialogue. It's interesting, every once in a while I can't help myself and I'll steal like a part of a line or something, and it'll have a place, even though it's a line really from another movie entirely, but it has a place in the scene. And I just happened. I was kind of like, yeah, no, I'm writing that in, like it's you can't stop it, because it's
that's what I love about script writing. We're also script writers, obviously, but like, it's just it's fun because I don't know, you just dive into like your own brain, and then it's you're putting your own stamp on it. But when it's something out of your own brain, like know, it's a completely different story. And
it's a filter. It's just like, you take in everything, right? But unless you're just a Xerox machine, which you're not, by the time it reconstitutes, it's already become something else. Which is cool, and everybody does that. Some people's stuff is more obvious, like Valentine's or even copies, right? But I remember like a moment in like there's a shot in Taxi Driver, which is one of my like key movies, right? That was like a real formative movie that to me taught me almost more about filmmaking than any other movie I'd seen. And there's an interesting sequence in Taxi Driver where he's sitting in the cab after having that. You've seen the movie, right? Have you guys seen Taxi Driver? Yeah. So there's a scene where he pulls into the garage right after the scene where Harvey Keitel yanks Jodie Foster out of the cab and throws like a $20 bill. He goes, "Hey, cabbie, forget about it. Like, you didn't see anything." So now De Niro's sitting in this car, and he's looking in the passenger seat, and the $20 bill is sitting there. And the way Scorsese does it is a single shot, and it's like just through the passenger window. It starts on De Niro looking. As he looks, the camera tilts down to the 20. Then it tilts back up to De Niro looking, like considering, like, should I take it? And then as he reaches for it, it kind of tilts with his hand and so it's basically like a following thing, but it's not cuts. It's like a 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's just kind of interesting. It's not like blows your mind. It's just like an interesting sort of visual choice, right? So I'm like, wow, this is, so obviously this is an innovative moment, a singular Scorsese moment, and because, and then I'm watching like Persona one day, and there's a shot of like Lee Ullman in a car, and she's looking at an envelope that she's going to mail, and the envelope is sitting on the seat, and it's the exact same 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's not like oh, that's a bad thing. It's just that, like as a director, that combination of moves or whatever for that sort of action, he filed that away, and I don't even know if when he went to set up that sequence in Taxi Driver, he was going consciously, oh, let's do the persona shot. It's more like you just, like you said, like with lines or whatever, it's just in there. Yeah. And so all of a sudden a scenario presents itself that is appropriate for this thing that you have in your toolbox, and you just use it, for that moment. And I thought that was really like interesting. Like, I'm like, okay, yeah, so everybody sort of just does that. It's just how you do it, that is different.
I think, I think, like you said, you're kind of creating your own little world and your own little viewpoint on the world when you write and you direct your projects and things. And I said,
you gotta have a vision.
Yeah, exactly. You definitely have vision. So, and speaking of vision, I say we can start talking about Some Guy Who Kills People.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, for me, that's like that's a movie that I really care about. I mean, I care about it because it's personal to me on a lot of levels. Yeah.
Such a good movie.
You can definitely feel that it's like
the writing. I guess we could start with Kevin Corrigan. I mean, showcasing his incredible range as an actor.
Oh yeah.
Like he's just,
we grew up seeing him in like
Grounded for Life. He was freaking hilarious on that show. He did
Goodfellas, Superbad.
Was Kevin in school at the same time as you or something like that?
You guys know each other?
No. What happened was Kevin had done a film called Bandwagon that was directed by a friend of mine, John Schultz, and I think I think as I was saying, like there was a bunch of us. Schultz was one of them. Peyton Reed was another one. There was a whole bunch of us that started working in the business at ZM Productions, making these behind the scenes documentaries, and we were all together working in these trailers on the back lot of Universal Studios. And that's where we all it was almost like our graduate school. That's where we all kind of got better at directing and cutting and seeing other directors work, because we were on so many sets. Right. And John Schultz was the first one of us to tackle a bigger, like I had already done America's Deadliest Home Video, but he was like, all right, I'm going to raise like, a couple $100,000 and do like a proper independent film. And so he did a movie called Bandwagon, and he cast Kevin. And I had, of course, seen, Goodfellas, but I never kind of put it together. And this is before Grounded for Life or anything. So Kevin had done like little things, but I didn't really know him as an actor. But when I saw one of the early cut of Bandwagon, he just made an impression. And then because of that movie, and he had become friends with John, we would kind of all run into each other from time to time. And then as the years went by, like Kevin had seen The Big Empty, and he was a real fan of that movie and a real supporter of that movie. He was very kind and said that movie, he loved The Big Empty, and he said he would say he would show The Big Empty to people. So I always really was grateful for that. And we had a certain common sort of sensibility or something, but we never worked together. So when finally, the opportunity came, and we were looking for someone to play Ken, again, he was somebody I was like, I'm dying to work with him. I totally see him in this part. and I'll just send it to him and see what he says. So that's really what it was. It was kind of like me going, "Hey, Kevin, we've been talking about working together forever. I think this is the one. What do you think?" And so I sent it to him, and he, responded right away and said, "This is great. I want to do it." So that's how he kind of came on board. And that actually, everything is kind of a domino effect. At the time, and still to a great degree, Kevin is perceived as sort of like an actor's actor. So when you're casting and trying to get people in a movie that's really low budget, which Some Guy Who Kills People was, that budget was like $250,000 or something. It helped because all of a sudden people are like, "Ooh, I want to work with Kevin," and that helped sort of give it a certain quality or an impression that it was like legitimate, and so we got a lot of actors kind of came to the project because he had already signed on. Yeah,
he was such a good role in Superbad. I mean, he was just he was like he did a lot of really big stuff around that time.
Oh yeah, he came straight from. Well, I haven't even seen this one. He came straight from the Tony Scott movie with Denzel Washington. What was it? It's a train movie.
Unstoppable.
Yeah. Chris
literally came right from that set, like to start filming on Some Guy. But yeah, no, he was working. I was just kind of flipping through, and I caught the scene in his bit in American Gangster. And it's just he's in tons of he's in tons and tons of stuff.
I mean,
he's in The Departed. Like he always brings this incredible thing that's specifically him to a movie. So, but he hadn't really played sort of a sympathetic lead. He is always playing sort of these like slightly criminal, he's supporting slightly shady kind of characters in movies, right? And so I think that was probably appealing to him to want to do.
It's great that you got to get him on there and just pull such a out of left field performance out of him when he's just so used to playing those characters.
One thing I really like about that is we're the same way with our projects. Like when someone comes to us and they're like, "Hey, we're like at a festival. Like we have a festival. We're in a festival coming up this week. I think it starts Tuesday."
Cool.
We did a documentary about our mom opening up She opened up the first rape crisis center, women's center in the South.
In Nashville.
Oh, wow.
In the 70s, yeah. It was 50 years ago.
So,
wow.
Think about that.
And
we'll have to send a link your way.
Please. No, I totally want to see that. That's awesome.
Ready to have that. And it's going to be playing at this historic theater that is
in Franklin, Tennessee.
Our mom used to go to dates in high school.
How cool. That's really great when that happens.
So you go to festivals and things and the people who really respond to things or when you post something, any way they find your project, when they come to you and they're like, "I really like this, like it really spoke to me," and I like creating relationships with them because your work
they get what the magic
that you create, and then Kevin's kind of like that. He's like, "You know what?
Yeah,
I remember Kevin really liked The Big Empty. I definitely need to reach out to him," and that I like the idea of that.
And also exactly, and also and it makes it easier. It's like it's just I'm not terribly comfortable with the part of getting to know people you don't know, or small talk in general. Like there's a lot of small talk in show business where everyone's just like friends immediately and they're talking blah blah blah, and I just never was really comfortable with that kind of thing. It's like if I don't connect with somebody, I have a real problem faking that. You know what I mean? And so so I can't convince an actor that I don't even know, let alone connect with, to be in a movie. But I had such a warm feeling toward Kevin from the beginning, and that it was easy. It was easy for me to say, "Hey, you should look at this because I think this would be fun for us to do this," and because I meant it. It wasn't like I'm trying to get, So and by the way, if you've ever seen Bandwagon, which is so interesting, he's like the most sensitive. It's about a little independent rock band that comes together and in the South, and he's the I don't know, I think he's the bass player or the guitarist, I can't remember, but his character is such this sort of soft, barely talks but obviously extremely warm character, which is the opposite really of what he ends up playing in movies that come after that. He's almost always like a slimy drug addict guy. And so I can always retain that image of him, and also what I know of him as a person.
Kevin Corrigan was just a great person to
Yeah,
have in the movie because
he knew the assignment. Yeah,
he was
yeah,
in everything at that time, and I'm
Yeah,
sure he was so busy, but such a juicy role. I'm sure he couldn't pass it up. So that's another thing. We wanted to start on John Landis and how he was
yeah. He
involved.
produced it. You know, huge
Yeah.
Hollywood legend,
Legendary
John Landis.
director. I
Huge
mean,
fan. Everybody's fans of
obviously.
his work. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah.
everybody's seen his work. I mean, it just
Yeah,
it
yeah.
speaks for itself. So, how was he about this project?
Well, yeah, it's funny. I was just yesterday. I was like flipping around on YouTube, and I came across the American Werewolf, making of. Yeah, I like you guys. I was always a huge fan of his films, and I didn't know initially that he was involved with the movie. When I went to interview with the writer Ryan Levin, who was also one of the producers, and a couple of other producers who actually physically managed the production, Landis wasn't there, and they asked me, I had already been given the script, and they asked me what was my sort of take on it. And I said, I loved, which was true, I just loved the blend of sort of comedy, horror, and drama, all in sort of equal parts, that it was just this really cool fusion. And I said it reminded me in some ways of the tone of an American Werewolf in London. And I remember they all kind of looked at each other like, how does he know? Because they made a point not to say anything about Landis.
Yeah.
So then later I found out, when I ultimately got the gig, I found out that he had actually initially been attached as a director, and that Ryan had been meeting with him and working on the script with him in anticipation of Landis directing it. But what happened is a pet project of John's called Burke and Hare.
Burke and Hare, yeah, good movie.
Suddenly, like, the financing came together, something that he'd been planning for a long time. So he said, well, I got to go make this bigger movie in England. And effectively what happened is all the money that was attached to him, which I think at the time was a few $1,000,000, the budget sort of went, with him. They were like, well, if you're not there, then we're not going to put our money in. So then Ryan went to Landis and said, well, look, so that the whole movie doesn't just go away, can you kind of come on as executive producer? And that way maybe we can hold on to some of the money and we'll get another director, but you can sort of, oversee it in a way. And so that's how it sort of kind of came together. But the truth of it is, and he said, yes, the truth of it is that he was off making Burke and Hare the whole time we were making Some Guy Who Kills People. So he really didn't have any, he was just busy. So it wasn't like he was coming in and saying, hey, I want to approve the new draft, or I want to approve these actors. He just kind of said, you guys, I trust you guys, go do it. And he was actually kind of surprised that we pulled it off because, he had been so used to making movies for $1 jillion that when he found out that we made Some Guy for only $250,000, that didn't even compute anymore, because that's lunch money. When you've made the Blues Brothers and shit, that's just like lunch money. So, but we showed him cuts of the movie as we were finishing it, and he gave his advice, and it was just a super cool thing to have his sort of approbation of our work, because like you said, like, we were fans, so you wanted him to be, you wanted him to like the movie, right? So that was neat. It was cool.
Like you were saying, American Werewolf in London, the tone of like the horror, the drama, and the comedy, like his mixture kind of shaped what horror is today. Like modern horror is those three things basically put together. Wes Craven's kind of Scream. Yes, that's pretty cool. That basically the father of modern horror was like associated with this movie.
Yeah. It was a big deal. It was a big deal for us. Like when you're a movie fan, and again, you sort of like those sort of the things that you grow up with that form you sort of, if you're lucky enough and they intersect your professional life, then it has this real sort of, it's like a circle is closing and everything sort of makes sense. And I've had a couple of those instances, like with Adam West and so forth, where like it all kind of like seems to come together. And with Some Guy Who Kills People, it even came together in a big way with a couple of times, not only just with Kevin and John Landis, but also with Karen Black,
Yes.
of whom I was a huge fan growing up. so Karen, getting to work with Karen, that was like another big deal because she was like such a giant figure in my upbringing, as a movie
Was that
goer.
was that her last movie?
I don't know. I think it was like it was definitely one of her last movies. We actually became really close, but she was very kind of traditionally strong in the sense that she was sick, I believe, when we were making the movie, but she never told me or anybody. That's just like that classic show folk. Like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to do the job. But yeah, she died shortly after that movie,
Well,
which was, and that affected me quite a bit. I mean, it was just like she just because she was such a huge sort of presence, like that was a big deal.
like the big maternal aspect of the movie.
Mhm.
Ivan and I were saying when we were watching it, like it really functions as a mother-son movie in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
dips into that genre because the dinner table scenes and just
Yeah,
their relationship and how believable it is because
yeah,
it's, if you're a mama's boy like us, I mean, like
yeah.
that's one aspect of the movie I really like because
Oh yeah, yeah.
living
yeah.
with his mom kind of just
And her performance was great.
Totally. Well, that parental thing is a big part of the whole thing. It's I'll have to send you, like I said, like the new Blu-ray is coming out through TerraVision, and we really, I sat down with everybody. Obviously Karen's gone, but Barry, and I sat down with Kevin and Leo and everybody, and we were just talking about the whole production and the making of. And one of the things that Kevin was attracted to that comes out in the documentary is that he was a father, like a new father. Like he had a young daughter. He has a daughter who's now grown, and actually just made her first feature, like as a director, independent movie. So that's weird. But at the time, he had a little girl, and so that relationship in real life attracted him to the relationship, in with Amy in the movie. And regarding Karen, it's funny because Karen at that point had done a number of horror films. Even though that's not what she started as, like her movies, going back to Easy Rider and Five Easy Pieces, and even like stuff in this like Airport 75 or Capricorn 1, she's like, she's the female lead and usually a very strong character. But later, after Burn Offerings and Trilogy of Terror and everything, and as she got older, she got cast in the more horror stuff. And even this part is a little one note in the sense that she's, a very hard, a disciplinarian and disappointed sort of mother, right? When in actuality, Karen was like super duper warm too and funny, and just really charming. So it's too bad that she passed away because I would have loved to have done something else with her that also like showed more of what she, her range, which obviously she demonstrated in a million movies. But yeah, that movie, just some guy just had more, like the expression is like meat on the bone. It just had all this stuff in it that I just keyed on. And even though I didn't write it, it was exactly the kind of thing that I was like dying to make. I think, as I told you, it was like coming off of Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus. And even if you guys just showed me that article about which was great, the Killer Hornet movie or whatever. And again, it was sort of like I had that for a brief period, I had that sort of stamp on me, is that's who I was, the shark guy, or the cheesy shark guy. And so it was like almost like a kind of like it was like
from that and kind of
it was just like I was like dying to say, well, look, like I made the cheesy shark movie and I'm not ashamed of it, but that's not it. I do these other things too. So some guy was kind of like a way kind of clear the that's just like clean the palette. Like, okay, here it is. Here's even though obviously didn't like light the world on fire in terms of numbers. It was still important for me to do something that was more, this is who I am, or this is what better represents me, I think. I mean, the other thing was that story really was just about the effects of being bullied, like horribly bullied. And that was something that I had experienced a lot of when I was a young person. So, and those things, if you've ever been bullied, those things stay with you. So, the fact that was such a big part of that story, I had a lot of I felt very connected to that material,
So. the way the movie functions is, obviously there's a huge twist at the end that no one sees coming.
Yeah, I didn't see that coming.
And
Yeah.
it's just, because you watch the movie and you think, okay, it's also a father-daughter movie, and this daughter is turning Kevin Corrigan's character into a real person,
right,
taking him out of his shell.
Because he's had a lot of trauma in his past, but he's also got a lot of mental health issues, I could say, I guess, because he was committed and things like that.
Yeah.
Right.
You think that's what the movie is. You feel bad. You're like, oh no, don't do this.
Exactly. Exactly. When I was reading it, for the first time, I was so, and this rarely happens, so many scripts are just hard to read. And when I was reading it, I was like, oh my God, this is like, no, because I was so clear to me that he did it.
Yes.
That now that he's got this relationship with his daughter, like you said, that's like turning him into this whole other thing. His whole life is turning around, but he's doomed because there's no way out of this. He's a killer. So he's even though he's falling in love and everything's coming together, it's fucked. So when the twist is finally, when I finally got to it, I was like, it was such a relief. I was like, thank God, because I didn't want this to be his fate. But the funny thing is that the twist, that was like the twist thing, which is essential to the story being a happy ending. In general, I'm not like a big twist guy. Like there's a thing that's happened in, I always loved Twilight Zone. Anything, I love kind of like experiencing twist things. But I think there's been a trend ever since, I would say probably like The Sixth Sense, where fooling the audience completely, or being a big, oh, you thought it was this and it's this, has become sort of its own sort of genre. And a lot of scripts are like just constructed to just like be sleight of hands, like you think it's this, but it's this. And I never, like, to me that's not the motive for a story. Like, it's interesting when it happens and you're like, oh, okay. But, or even speaking of Jacob's Ladder, like Jacob's Ladder is a big twist. By the way, Sixth Sense rips off Jacob's Ladder completely. The whole movie structure is he's dead and you didn't know it, right? So it was funny when it came down to making the movie, the script still was getting like slightly polished, and some guy, and Ryan was really, as a writer, worried that the twist paid off. Like he was afraid that, to your point, like since it kind of comes out of nowhere, that people would be like, oh, that's bullshit. There's no way, Leo's character could have done it. And so there was a great like concern on his part to make sure that we put enough stuff in there that if anybody was like scrutinizing it, that they would be like, okay, that is logical that it would be that way. And my brain doesn't think that way. It's worked that way. I'm more emotional. It's like, okay, he didn't do it, good. That's all I care about. I don't really care, like specifically, how it happened. But yeah, I guess it worked because most people didn't guess that it was,
And then it's a film riddled with dark humor and really bloody violence, but
right.
You gotta subvert that with the comedy and then the tenderness within the characters and the character-driven movie.
Barry Bostwick, of course.
Barry Bostwick. How did he come about?
He was like, well, like I was saying, it's like Barry. Even though I wasn't like, I'd seen a ton of Barry movies. Obviously Rocky Horror, and I'd seen Megaforce, and I had seen like TV movies, that he did. Like I can't remember if it was Winds of War or War and Remember It. I think it was Winds of War, and also like he played George Washington in the TV movie when I was a kid. But he came into audition, like basically all these actors, like I was saying, came into audition because our casting director was able to bring him in, because she was able to say, well, we're making this movie and Kevin's in it. And these actors came in to read. So Karen Black came in to read. I didn't even know she was. So like I was basically auditioning actors, and Karen Black walked in, and I was like, you don't have to read, like you got it. And Lucy Davis came in to read, and I was a huge fan of The Office, and Shaun of the Dead. So that was like another like, what, you're auditioning? No, if you want to be in the movie, you got it, And Barry did the same thing. Barry came in, And he like I was talking to him about this in the making of recently. I've never seen an actor come in an audition with such enthusiasm. Like he came in and he was like rolling around on the floor. Like he was just he was like, and Barry and I became very close actually. Barry is just a great, funny freak in the best way. Like he's like a real like freak. Like he's a real like he's one of us.
Yeah,
He's like just the coolest fucking guy. And so like that's why I stuck him in Las Vegas. You know, it's like, oh please, you know, like uh anytime I can work with Barry, you know, would be is a treat. So he was
the Danny Zuko haircut and Some Guy Who Kills
Yeah,
People.
'cause,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
I was watching
and
it. Yeah,
a lot of the stuff John Travolta did, and even now, was like he did that originally, and like the the things about the character, the way they do certain things, certain even parts of the
even
plot,
gags, like he said,
like,
the part where they play with the saran wrap was his idea
because it was his old some dirty thing that his older brother told
he
him
said
as
his
a
older
kid.
brother told him you can use saran wrap as a condom or
And
something.
his older brother really,
Right.
I think his older brother really was like a like one of those greasers in the 50s.
Yeah,
So he kind of like based it off of Zuko.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
so a lot of that, like you know, is like it speaks for itself, his work, and
Oh yeah, and he's just a larger than life figure. I mean, he's a big
Larger than absolutely larger than life, and but also like super duper like just so cool and so down to earth and so funny. And it's funny because we did the interviews for the Some Guy Who Kills People making of at one of our oldest friends' house in LA. She lives our friend Christiane, who I know my wife and I know all the way back from college. She lives in a house in LA that was owned or was rented at one point by no, I'm sorry. There was a manager, John Travolta's manager was in that house previously, and Travolta was known to hang out at that house. And I just knew something about that. Barry came to the house because I was using the house as the place to shoot the interviews. Barry walked into the house and he goes, I've been here before. And I'm like, really? And we were like, how do you know? He goes, and it became clear that he knew Travolta's manager and his manager. I think they were all the same people. I think it was all like together in those days. So he had actually been to that house, and the Travolta collection and the Grease connection and all that stuff sort of just kind of came together. And but a lot of people don't know that, you know, a lot of normal people don't know that he was the original Danny Zuko, right? And on stage. And I just enjoyed, like, you know, every second working with him. Like he's just like the most fun you can have. You know, I feel bad because I think like I said in Las Vegas, I made him run and stuff in that movie, and it's like, you know, I shouldn't have done that.
Great time. And we were laughing so hard because, you know, he's banging Ken's mom.
Oh yeah, and then like even when he thinks Ken's the killer, he's still not. He's still gonna push for sex
still
with his
pushes
mom.
for sex.
Yeah.
It was just so funny.
Right. Yeah. He fit perfectly because I think they all did, because they were all capable of. They're all funny people, and they're certainly and witty people, and they're certainly have an appreciation of comedy and can do that. But moreover, they were all like strong dramatic actors, and that's what I think was most important. Like the whole, even though there are funny things in Some Guy Who Kills People, like none of that was directed, or at least I didn't direct it as like, let's play it as a comedy. It was always like, let's just play it as a situation that's real. And if it's funny, then it'll be funny. We don't have to like play it as a comedy kind of thing. And it's because those actors, you know, are so believable as dramatic actors, you know, that I think that's what I appreciated most. You know, that's why the movie works for me. And Barry's like that too. I mean, even though Barry does a lot of goofy movies, even in something like Las Vegas, like if you see his death scene in Las Vegas, he's really doing a death scene. You know, even though I have him impaled by a helicopter blade in this ridiculous thing, you know, with Frankie Muniz, and it's still, he's like playing he's a real death scene, you know, and a good one. You know, like he dies good, you know, like believably. And so that's a testament to him as an actor. You know, he just like commits, just like Adam West did, you know, like fully commits, you know, to his stuff.
So how about that ice cream suit Kevin Corrigan wears? Like,
Right.
costume department put that together, and
Yeah. It's funny. That's also in the. I was just because we this our Oliver Deer, who was our art director. He did everything. Like he he designed the ice cream suit. He did all the drawings, like all the drawings in Ken's room, and every drawing is actually
Did
Oliver's work.
he do the poster for the movie? There
He
was
did the post.
looked like a comic book panel. I love that.
He did the
poster.
poster. He did the poster too. He did the animated drive-in, like old vintage, concession stand thing.
Yeah.
Like he did everything. And so he designed the suit, but
yeah,
he had never made like an ice cream suit. And he just said that was kind of complicated because it was just this really crappy foam
yeah.
material. And he found somebody who was a little better at sewing to be able to like actually throw it together. But yeah, those are one of those things that it's just like, like I am not a costume designer, and I wouldn't know how to build that. And so it's one of those things where, well, it's in the script, and somebody, the art director and the costume designer are going to have to solve it. And fortunately, they were super talented. They just came up with something that worked, that Kevin could like work in.
Kevin,
but yeah,
his stoicism is just unparalleled in the movie. You know what I mean? Like you get like the subtlety of it. Yeah,
I like how he played himself in high school, but you put the duct tape over his face or something.
We got a chuckle at him playing himself in high school.
And
that
then
was
he had
great.
to have that scar the whole movie. Like that's
great scar too. Great. That's a great thing you pointed out, because like a scar that has to be there like every shot, and it has to last, and it has to be believable. Yeah. It's a great special makeup effect that they did.
How they made
it's like a curve.
Yeah, and there's an indentation in his face.
Yeah.
Something that was easy to do every day and make look the same.
Like those old samurai, like those old cult samurai movies where someone gets slashed and then like slashes like 3D over their head. Like
exactly. No, I thought that was like that was like, and exactly that's the kind of effect that is like you don't even think about because it's so believable. You're just like, oh, that's like real talent to like do that. Also on a very, because like he wasn't like in a makeup chair for hours or something. It had to be done very quickly. So that was a great effect. And on the other hand, doing some of the broader special makeup effects for that movie were also a lot of fun too. Those weren't really in the script. I mean, going back to sort of like the director's polish, the script was all there, the characters' dialogue, all that was Ryan's. But one of the things I did expand upon really were the murder scenes, because as they were written, they were fairly, straight ahead. They were just like, oh, somebody jumps out and stabs somebody. So I thought there was opportunity to like give those like a little more personality. And I had always wanted to do a scene in a drive-in. And maybe we talked about this. I had written like the ending of this Kemper movie that I wrote that actually took place at the drive-in. And when they made the movie that I didn't direct, they ended up shooting it in some crummy factory, because that's where you shoot every low budget serial killer. So they didn't shoot it in a drive-in, but we had the opportunity finally to like, okay, well, I can finally do my drive-in murder scene, because when it's like we could get it, and it's not like it's essentially, it doesn't have to be a drive-in because it's just a meeting place for like a drug deal that turns out to be a murder. But it was like, but I like that in setting, so that's why it's staged there for the decapitation scene, when the guy gets decapitated.
Was that a real drive-in?
There's a real drive-in. Yeah, it was like one of the last drive-ins in Los Angeles.
There's a few in Tennessee.
Yeah, it's cool. It's like they are like, there's only a handful left, but they, again, depending on when you were born and where you lived, I have very fond memories of going to the drive-in. And
everywhere. My mom said in Knoxville, Tennessee, there was a porn drive-in.
Oh, that's so interesting you bring that up. I tell that story all the time. It's like, not all the time, but it's like I remember vividly in New York when I was a kid, we would drive out to Long Island on Christmas Eve to visit relatives. And it was like my father would take this weird way back. And I have this, one of the most vivid memories I have as a little kid is like, it's like 3 a.m, like driving back. And I looked out and I see these, it's like these trees. And then all of a sudden there's like a clearing for like 2 seconds. And it's just this giant porn moment. And then the trees go by, I was like, what, like, what the fuck did I just see? And it was just because the highway, at some point there was a vantage point, I think porno drive-ins were much more secluded, but still there was like some 2-second window where you're like, all of a sudden it's like this big giant,
it's just crazy. People driving in their car in the middle of the night to watch porn on a giant screen.
That's wild, right? And so I always thought that the world of the drive-in was like a great
I love
location.
I love those scenes where where they're checking out the crime scenes and Barry Bostwick's just kind of like acting like, oh, I've done this for 100 years, like
Yeah.
nothing new. Like,
And there's like these horrible
And then-
grisly deaths. And
Yeah.
it's just like so matter of fact about everything.
I also like how I forgot his name, but the guy who played Jar Jar Binks,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Ed
Yes. Yes.
Best. Yes.
Ed Best was played one of the police officers.
Yes.
detectives.
One of our favorite actors.
I thought that was really cool seeing him, and without the CGI Jar Jar stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize that he wasn't this full CGI character. There was somebody playing him.
Yeah, that was like one of the first kind of motion capture things they
Right.
did.
Right. Yeah, he was a last minute. Actually, Ahmed was a last minute sort of replacement for Patton Oswalt was supposed to do that part.
Yeah.
It's like the mayor. He's like the mayor of the town, and I think Patton was ill, and at the last minute we got the call that he couldn't do it, and my casting director said, "I got somebody." We were already making the movie, and it was toward the end of the movie. So she said, "What about Ahmed Best?" And I said, "I don't really know him as an actor outside of Star Wars." And she said, no, he can do it. And I trusted her, and he just kind of showed up and did it, which was, a favor to us. So that was, it was fun. But I think the whole cast of Some Guy was like one of those like really lucky sort of things where everybody was just like the right actor. And on top of that, everybody had a great chemistry, like really strong chemistry.
His daughter, for such a young kid, like she was just turned down an amazing performance too. Yeah.
Amazing. Ariel Gade was like that was a little bit, that was probably we spent more time, as you always do that, like with a kid, it's a little more touchy because not only is it like a super important character, and also like it's like really, at least in my experience, really strong dimensional child actors are as hard to find. That's not like an easy thing. And so we looked at a bunch of talented kids, but she came in and it was just like, wow, like this is like a little actor, like a little person, a little adult, and so she made a huge contribution to that movie. Really talented.
Really made it work.
And she was doing a lot of stuff around that time too. Like she was kind of an in-demand child actor at the time.
She actually, because she had done Alien versus Predator and Dark Water and stuff like that. And then she stopped acting. And she went to school and she got married. She's married.
Wow.
And I just saw her for this documentary, and first time in like 13 years, and she's all grown up, but also she kind of looks exactly the same. She said she's actually getting back into it. She wants to get back into acting.
Good. Oh, that is awesome. She'll have a great.
Yeah, she's got a lot of talent. Yeah.
Really talented.
Yeah, we always laugh about the scene where he's like, pick on somebody your own size, and he's driving.
Because
there's like two like 9-year-old
being
girls
bullied at her like middle school,
and then Ken comes up
practice and he sees it and he's like trying to talk shit, but then he wrecks. Yeah, that was
right.
That was so funny.
He's trying to be a dad, but he just can't quite cut it yet.
Exactly. He's just he's just bumbling his way through it. At least he's trying to find his way through it. But again, like if you look at that moment, it's like, again, like for something as seemingly simple as a moment as scripted that he crashes into another car is like, when you think about it from a production standpoint, well, you go like, okay, well, if it's a bigger budget movie, we'll just crash a car into a car, and the production will absorb whatever damage it is that you do to either the car, the picture car, the car that's hitting the car, and the car that's being hit. And if you're going to do it many times, they'll have doubles of those cars. Like on a low budget movie, that you can't do that. You can't go, okay, we can't crash the car because we can't afford it. So like, how are you supposed to sell that moment? So if you watch that, it's kind of like a weird gag. What I did was, we looked amongst the crew of the cars that were there, because I think that's really we realized that Ken's car we had already established, but the car that he hits we hadn't. So we were looking at the cars that ran, and fortunately one of the production vehicles, somebody's car, had a big dent in the back, so we could say, okay, if I shoot this properly, then when we reveal post hit, you'll actually see the dent in the car. So that's one thing solved. But then the next thing is, how do you solve the impact when you can't actually hit cars together? So I basically fell back on an old Hercules trick, which is the air ram, which is basically a compressed air gag. So we basically put two cars together, and between the bumpers, we had like a compressed air cannon filled with just, like Fuller's Earth and bits of newspaper and shit. And then just for that one moment of impact, basically 3, 2, 1, we had just people kind of just push the bumpers together and then set off the air cannon so that you get this. It's almost like this impression of something happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you think, and it works in terms of cuts, like he goes like this, you cut to the, and then you cut to the broken, the dent car. But it's like, if you think about it, that would never happen when two cars, there wouldn't be this explosion of whatever. But it's something actually we used to do. We did on Xena too. Like if you notice, it comes from Hong Kong action movies. When people when there's punches, you would actually load up dust on the clothes, on the wardrobe of the actors, like with a pad. So when somebody hits, you get this impact, right? But like that doesn't happen in life, but your brain just goes, oh yeah, that must have hurt because I'm seeing stuff coming off of the, so I just did that, like, and you're like, okay, I hope that works.
Oh man, yeah.
That's good advice. Anybody who needs a car crash in their movie, listen to that.
I mean,
Low dust.
Watch like masterclass in filmmaking. Watch Jack Perez movies.
Yeah.
How to do it for no money, right?
I mean, not even that, but like from a scripting standpoint, like how everything's always character driven, and it like very introspective. A lot of your movies, many of them are just these introspective.
They're not hollow at all. The people, the place, everything kind of comes together.
And it's always like an unraveling.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Leo Fitzpatrick. How was him? He's in that disturbing '90s movie Kids. Everybody remembers him.
He's a big indie actor. I mean, people, a lot of fans. He's the kind of person who he walks down the street and people are like, "Hey, that's fucking
right." I didn't know him, but again, it's kind of like that weird thing that happens where you set something in motion and then it's sort of like a domino effect. Kevin recommended Leo because I think Kevin and Leo knew each other sort of from New York and just sort of like socially, but they never really worked together, or maybe they had but didn't. I think they were in the same movie, but they never had any scenes together. And so he was kind of like, what about Leo for this for and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And they had a kind of, like I said, they had a friendship, so that was actually good for the relationship, for the character.
Especially with how things turn out,
especially that big twist in the end,
and also they're both New York. Obviously they're both New Yorkers, I am too, but it's long since lost my accent. But it's funny, if you listen to them, they both have they never left New York, so they both have very distinctive New York accents, and it kind of makes them like they're almost in their own little world, just because they talk the same way, which is also good for the bond between those two characters. So they had a real good chemistry. I was like, yeah, this is that's interesting. And Leo was great. I mean, I tend to. It's funny because Barry, as big and theatrical as Barry can be, when he has to do understated moments, they really are like these beautiful little, like when he has scenes like where Barry's looking and sort of just putting shit together, like when he's looking at the refrigerator, like looking at the sort of collage, when he's starting to put that together, or when he's in the scene with Kevin and he's asking him about his drawings and he sees the cut up magazines on the floor, like these tiny little things are like things that I really love. And Leo, like Kevin, is very much like, it's all like the little things, because they're not very vocal characters. They don't say a lot. I mean, Kevin basically says very little in the whole movie. That's his character. And Leo says more, but they're not really these huge dialogue driven scenes. So yeah, Leo and him, that was a really cool, like, accident that Kevin said Leo, and I said, yeah, that works, and then it just worked.
Yeah.
All the gore and blood effects, did you have somebody doing those?
Yeah. And I as is probably clear, it's I really defer to practical effects over digital effects.
Yeah.
And that's that's the world I grew up in. The first splatter movies I went to as a 13-year-old, whatever, those are the original Friday the 13th movies, and Tom Savini and Dawn of the Dead and all that stuff. So I like to do it that way if I can. And so, yeah, I was working with some young effects people who were like down with like doing those kinds of gags. So everything was a practical gag, whether it was the decapitation in the drive-in or the hand gag. I don't know if you saw any of the behind the scenes in that.
I think it was on your YouTube page. They showed how you did the hand thing, and it was
right.
like real hand.
Yeah, it's like a real hand with a fake drive-in floor, that kind of stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
God. I was like, there's no way that would be a real hand because it looks so real, but it was actually a real hand doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like even though you can do that, like you can, it's so easy to like do this against green screen, but like I don't that doesn't excite me. Like I want to be out there on location and build I want to do that. That's fun for me. So and I think what's funny is I can't remember. Oh yeah, so Oliver, again, Oliver, who was our art director, he did the only CGI in the movie or compositing really is stuff where, like for example, the movie on the drive-in screen, we wanted to project an actual concession stand trailer, but the projector really wasn't bright enough and it wouldn't have registered. So things like that, or we changed like the signage on some of like the Army surplus store. So it says Green Oaks, which is the fictional town. Things that are really undetectable but need to be there for the story to make sense. But he did at one point say, hey, maybe I'll try to sweeten like the decapitation, which we did with like air cannon and blood, real squids and all that. And he added a little bit of CGI in there as a test, and I was like, no, because for me it's like my eye just goes, no, even if it's just a piece of it, it's not the same. So we like there's no blood effect in that movie that isn't practical. So I kind of like, I'm very much a purist.
It's more fun, man. Come on,
it's more fun. It's more believable. It's more. I mean,
yeah.
Even people watching movies knowing that, well, like growing up, we're always like, man, they really did that. That's not like just an effect.
That's on camera.
We always appreciated that, and a lot of people do. So that was cool.
Yeah.
And, I mean, look at the decapitation in like The Omen. David Warner's decapitation with the pane of glass. Like I saw that as as a little kid, and I was just like, that's just, and it's also a mask. It's not just the fact that it's practical. It's just how you shoot that, and with digital effects, it's just, I mean, it's like everybody, it's a long argument. Everybody's like, digital, but yeah, I don't find the same, there isn't a weight to the moment because it hasn't actually been photographed. It's been rendered. So your brain doesn't perceive that. If you take a fake head and you throw it through the air and you film that, that's going to feel, even if the head is paper mache, that's going to feel more like an actual event than something that was built, inside of a computer. So I always, choose that if I can. That was one of the one circumstances where we didn't have anybody telling us that we had to do it CGI. So we did it, like old school Super 8, like that's how we would do it. Right. So that's how we did it.
The care you have putting into the movie, like with the characters, the visual effects, everything's just so organic, and I think it set that movie apart from other movies.
That's why I feel like you can really relate to.
Obviously,
it really draws you in.
And obviously, it's a cult classic now. It's got that new DVD release, so I think
it's all over the internet. Yeah,
I think all that.
I think we watched it on Tubi.
That care you put into it really speaks volumes. And
that's awesome. It's one of the ones I really care about.
So we think it's about time to talk about Blast Vegas.
Yeah.
One of my favorite movies ever made.
Yeah.
So
I haven't heard that before, so that's cool.
I don't know. I love movies where
this is how we discovered the movie.
I think it was like my last year of undergrad. It was like the spring. If I'm not mistaken,
2013.
And then they did the big sci-fi premiere. I think it was, and then I remember seeing all the TV spots for it and things like that. And I'm like, well, okay, so there's this like big epic movie starring Frankie Muniz. We like worship Frankie Muniz.
Well, we grew up on Malcolm in the Middle and all his
and all his movies and stuff.
Right.
And really, sometimes I wish he would have taken like the Shia LaBeouf route, like I say, like he would have been like but this movie, like I said, scratched that.
He didn't
itch.
get like a Transformers or an Indiana Jones, but it was so cool to see him in a role like this where he gets to do all that. And and it was just the movie was all over the place. It had drama, action, the romance, all that.
And it was
good
just,
stuff,
the movie knew exactly what it was, and then it just appreciated that about itself and ran with it. And that's just what we love so much about it.
Yeah.
And all the good actors in it. Was that John Landis at the beginning?
Yeah, John Landis acts.
And Joe Dante.
Yeah, and Joe Dante,
and
obviously.
They don't even act it that much, but you got them both in this movie. How did that come about?
Well, I mean, John was very kind, to, I thought, well, what happened is again, like with that Las Vegas, that script had been in development with the company that was making it for a long time before I got into it, or got attached to it. And when I got the script, it was like it had really nothing to do with the poor writers who had written it. They had just gone through this ridiculous development process. And by the time I was reading the script, which the studio had said, we're fine, we're making this. I mean, it was like someone had taken a story and thrown it into a blender. Like for a simple, silly supernatural sandstorm movie, I was like, again, I was kind of like in the situation where it's like, it seems like people who were dead are suddenly alive. Like it didn't make any sense to me. So that was another one of those, unlike Some Guy Who Kills People, where like the script was like perfect. This was a script where I was like, oh fuck, I've got to like somehow make sense of this. Yeah, one of the biggest things we shifted, thank God, was that the original script was much more favoring sort of the beautiful people frat. It was like they were the protagonists. And one of the things I really said, well, because I mean, I'm a nerd, so it's like I don't really give a shit about frat boys in love or whatever. I said, let's shift this so that, the losers are our heroes, like that's what it should be about. So that's where, that the sort of Frankie Maggie Castle things shifted to the forefront. And then I also wrote a part for Barry, because Barry, I wanted Barry in there, and the idea of like an old Vegas showman, sort of being sort of a Gandalf like character. Yes, exactly. I thought would be really great.
And like
he's the one who helps him get through it.
He knows.
And sacrifices himself and all that stuff. Like, so it was like classic, an archetype that I thought that would be a great part for Barry. So the script sort of developed. I mean, I never got any credit for it, but I spent a lot of time just trying to like help the script get in, shaped a little more into something that I felt like I could direct. That movie was easy to do because, again, talking about drawing from what you love, like growing up in the 70s, I was exposed to like the rash of disaster movies that came out of Universal Studios. So all, whether it's Earthquake or Towering Inferno was Fox, but there's just like a million, Irwin Allen, disaster movies. And this is how I kind of, even though this is a supernatural thing, to me, it was like a disaster movie, and that was sort of the shape of the thing. So I was trying to draw from like a lot of those moments, and again, we ran into, again, I'm probably repeating myself, but again, we ran into a timing issue where we needed to pad the movie. And so that whole scene in the garage, did we talk about that? The whole scene in the garage.
Yeah, where they almost get robbed and killed. And
by the looter, which is like basically
watching that.
That was a complete, like, after we had shot the movie, went back and shot this whole thing because we needed time. And also, I was able to draw from, like, I remember in Earthquake, there's a whole subplot where Marjoe Gortner is a National Guardsman who kind of goes nuts and holds Victoria Principal hostage. And there's this whole scene where George Kennedy is trying to, so I think that was in the back of my head. And I was like, well, we can't do any more special effects, and it has to be a contained location. So like in between the time they go, let's go to the Eiffel Tower, and then they show up at the Eiffel Tower, well, they got to get their car in the garage. So it's a garage scene. And I scripted this whole suspense scene, and I cast this guy, Steve Shube, who is one of my oldest friends. Oh, there you go. So Steve Shube actually introduced my wife to me when we were in college, and he was an actor I used to put in my NYU films, and he's done a lot of movies. I cast him as the looter,
Yeah.
and just created this crazy thing. But that was a real like pain in the ass to even get that approved, because like sci-fi at the time had this law, like a creative law, where they said, well, our villains are not human. Our villains have to be creatures or supernatural. So the villain in this movie is the sandstorm. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm trying to reason with them, this ridiculous concept. I'm like, yeah, but in a disaster, people's true colors come out and they're bad people who take advantage. I'm trying to explain this. It's like, don't you just want the movie longer? Like, let me just make the goddamn scene. So we did that. John Landis and John, going back to what you were saying, I asked John because I had the relationship with him from some guy. He had shown up in a couple of like cameos in the past. So I asked him if he would do it. And then I said, it would be fun to have Joe, who's his old friend, kind of stunt cast the two of them in the opening. I sort of was thinking of like almost like the opening of Twilight Zone, with Dan Aykroyd and Albert Brooks sort of together in this one thing. So yeah, they were totally game to do that. But it's funny. It's like I in many ways I almost feel like I got it more right with Fear Force 5 in some ways. Like I almost wish I had gotten Joe Dante and John Land, because I look. It's funny. Again, I'm glad you guys liked the movie. I had a hard time with that movie just because there was a lot of like network politics and just like constantly. There's a lot of politics for a silly sci-fi original.
Yeah.
So it's like it's always harder to try to get the thing done when you're dealing with that.
And they'd just done Sharknado, and they were getting all this attention, so they're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
really got to play
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
control everything."
Yeah, they were bigger than they ever had been in terms of like their output with films, and like you said, they were just raking in the views, and then like just the social media aspect of it. I know was big.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think like they probably had everything. Just they just thought they had to stay.
They didn't want to. They thought they didn't want to like step on their momentum or whatever.
Yeah,
right.
So that's interesting to know that you had to deal with a lot of that.
Time kind of.
Yeah, it was a lot of that kind of stuff, and stuff. Just the elements, like like it was just difficult because it's all set in Las Vegas, but you can't shoot. We shot only like second unit. Like after the movie was over, I went to Las Vegas with my first AD, and we basically shot a lot of plates and things. But actually, all the casino stuff was done outside of Joshua Tree near LA, in a Native American casinos that we could actually, casinos are casinos, right? And so that was a lot easier to shoot. We basically shot in one big casino and kind of changed the look of different parts of it. But it was an interesting thing from a production standpoint because we all, like the crew, lived in the hotel casino where we shot. So it was the first time where I would wrap for the day and I would just go into the elevator and go up to my room, and then I would come down the next morning and we would just like shoot. So that was convenient. But also I had to rewrite a lot of scenes that were outside because it was like 120 degrees out there in the desert. And there were a lot of scenes where I was like, the crew and the actors are just dying out here. And so I would like quickly like reconceive, like, okay, well, instead of happening, out in the parking lot, it's actually happening inside of I'd look around and go, oh, this is, like what was the scene? There's a scene where they come into it's like an off-track betting world, with a lot of monitors. I was like, okay, that's inside with air conditioning. We can make that work. But we had a lot of old school shit. We had a lot of like blowing, we had a lot of blowing dust and styrofoam boulders and all that stuff. And that was fun to do. Yeah.
It was the behind the scenes of one of the scenes
when they're driving the van.
Yeah. Driving the van or the dance bus or whatever. And you're like throwing like everything's, you hear your voice, there's like stuff blowing on there.
Right.
It's like this dust filter they have, like, they have to put over it because there's just
yeah. Well, I mean, it's like I was trying to do as many practical things as possible. I think Sandstorms is funny because it's like Sandstorms are sort of an easy thing to do as a CGI thing, but it's also kind of like in a way kind of boring because it's almost like just applying this like thing, a wash over the thing. Yeah. We did a lot of in camera, as you saw, like dust blowing, but then the studio wanted more, so we ended up like layering CGI on top of that anyway. But yeah, it was Frankie was like a really cool guy. Another one of these like super hardworking, like he came up like there. It's interesting when you meet people who are like sort of raised in it, like television, where like he had to be like a professional as a kid and like every week come to work and like bust it out. You could tell like his training was like that. Like he just like, he never didn't know his lines. He always was like, even when he was sick, he was like busting it out. He was like, and I have just a lot of respect for actors who just like are really have that like work ethic. And he was exactly like that. That was fun to watch.
Just a regular,
he's like a professional race car driver now. It's pretty crazy.
And I think, and he's from the South. He's from Virginia, so I think he even still lives up there most of the time. I think when he's not racing and stuff. I just he tweets about it a lot on Twitter. But like I said, I think like you said, he grew up in that mindset where he's strict schedule TV, and I think that served him well. And it's good to know that we're such big fans. It's good to know that he was a cool guy to work with, and obviously now he's a race car driver, so there's that whole thing.
Right.
How did casting him in the movie? Were you was
I think that was one of those circumstances where the studio, once it was like this, the basically their nerd became the hero. I think there was this limited number of people that they were interested in looking at, and I think Sci-Fi was just like either they had a relationship with him or they knew he was somebody that they wanted to work with. So they're the ones that came up with Frankie, and then I was more involved in sort of like casting like Barry and things like that. But yeah, he was. I like working with Maggie. She was she's a Canadian actor, and I thought she was, she's very bright, and I thought that was cool to get her.
There's a lot.
Yeah, there was some interesting actors in that.
Michael Steger from we used to watch 90210, the reboot, and Michael Steger, Oren, he's a really big star of that, and then
right.
Of course, we're huge fans of the Lawrence brothers, and then Andy Lawrence is there.
Right. Yeah, he was fun. He was a lot of fun. He was actually great fun to work with, and yeah, it was great because you're dealing. It was like kind of the first time where I was dealing with like it's interesting when you think about it because it's I'm used to dealing with I do crowd scenes and stuff, but mostly you're dealing with a small number of cast in a scene, and in this movie, there's scenes where there's like 10 people, in a scene. So just sort of blocking, and how you shoot like groups of people. And you'll notice again, like even though it was a slightly bigger budget, there wasn't tons of time to shoot a million different pieces of coverage. So I was always looking for those compositions where you could kind of arrange people so that you get the scene, but you wouldn't have to do a million close-ups of people. So so that was an interesting experience.
Well, yeah.
Again, it was one of those things where again you're dealing with like CGI, a lot of CGI, and that's something that again I'm less comfortable with because no matter what I communicate, it's not like some guy who kills people where you're like making it happen on set. It's like you're just saying this is what I want, and then you kind of sit back and hope the shot comes back the way it is. And sometimes you're able to give notes and say, can you change? But it's a very sort of like it's the opposite of what we were talking about before, where your hands are on it. Your hands are definitely not on it. So you're trying to like
just like stamp
talk it through, and you're like, it's like saying to somebody like, it's like you're trying to be a painter, but somebody else is holding the brush, and you're like, no, move it a little, like you're not. You just give me the brush, like I'll do. So you can't do that with CGI unless you're a CGI artist, or animator, which I'm not. So
stuff like all the tigers and the tornadoes, and there's really no set way to do that. So it's just kind of like it's not just like touch-ups. This is like ridiculous, like
full CGI,
like the
tiger scenes,
disaster movies, stuff you wouldn't expect to see.
The concept of everything getting destroyed, so the zoos and everything get destroyed, so the tigers.
Right.
That was hilarious.
There was a scene where they go face to face with the tiger. That was
right.
The very last shot of the movie. There's
the very last. Why that
right.
At the end with that really good song. We downloaded that song from the movie because we like.
Right. Yeah. No, there's some stuff in it. It's like it's one of those tricky situations where and Sci-Fi does this, and a lot of companies do this, or like the same thing with Drone Wars, where you're like almost biting off more that you can choose story wise for the budget that you have. I think in the case of Las Vegas, it probably was like a bigger budget. It was probably more like 2 million or something. but even so, it's like those stories generally get told for like $20 million, like, so how do you deliver, on the expectations, the audience expectations, I guess, or even my expectations, what I want to see if I was, if I'm watching this thing. So you try the best, you try the best you can. Fortunately, there's a certain amount of humor that we kind of injected into that thing, so that again, maybe you're protected somewhat, because the tone of it is you got Barry, you got Frankie, it's not like a deadly serious movie, so you can kind of get away with quasi
the self-awareness of the movie. Like I said, with Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus, you really ushered in that idea of where those movies on like Sci-Fi Channel, and even like those type of movies in general, to like where, like I said, where they know what they are and they're really self-aware and they're not too serious and they're not caught up in being too serious.
Even though the subject matter is relatively serious, I mean, it's like, they're getting all picked off one by one, basically.
Yeah, we were talking about how much of a throwback movie, like you were saying, the airport movies and Earthquake. We were talking about
Poseidon Adventure.
It's like the Poseidon Adventure.
Exactly.
The whole bit about how the whole idea of how like people are being shaved off every now and again as
right.
the movie goes on. More and more of the main characters start dying off one by one, and it's definitely one of those movies. And like you said, Barry Bostwick goes down like a champ, obviously.
And Michael too. I mean, it's like, and when it comes time for those moments, because I remember those moments in Poseidon Adventure, or Gene Hackman or Shelley Winters dying, or the end of Earthquake, where Charlie Heston sacrifices himself to go after Ava Gardner. Like, those are played as big sort of serious, like operatic moments. So when I have those moments, where Orin is going to die and he's holding, I play those as straight and as possible, because even though the stuff around it may be silly, like when it comes down to those moments, there's no, you have to commit to that, you have, and the actors commit to it too. And so I think it ends up making what it ends up becoming is this weird sort of blend of tones, maybe not as successful as something as Some Guy, which is very engineered that way. But what you end up with Las Vegas is you get like serious stuff and then kind of goofy stuff and then quasi stuff, like you can kind of get a mix of things, which is okay, I guess. I mean, I
think the movie definitely calls for it.
A lot of funny dialogue.
There's all this, there's like fucked up stuff that happens,
right.
But you're taken back to it when you see this tiger running around, or
Frankie Muniz saying, "Oh, I hate alliteration." I like that.
Yeah, I know. And then the Lord of the Rings references, and then just the jabs at Vegas culture and things like that are fun. And like I said, any movie where Frankie Muniz is being like a badass is going to be a good movie in my book. Like we watching like Agent Cody Banks, and
Big Fat Liar was a good one.
So it's just so much fun to fucking watch the movie.
The ending is so satisfying. The sword.
Yeah. That was again, there was a lot of there were a lot of movies I saw as a kid that like sort of found their way into that. So that was fun, to be able to do that.
The underdog, becoming the hero, and
right.
he's not like this big jock or anything, but he's able just to be the one who survives and saves the world in the end. Was really cool.
Yeah, and he makes you
love a good transformation.
Yeah, exactly. Like he goes through a transformation, he plays it totally serious, and then of course at the end he has to touch the heavens to restore order with the sword. So that scene where he holds up the sword, I just it's something about it, man. Like just the idea, everything about the movie, I just love. Like I feel like it was like made for me.
Oh, I'm so glad. I mean, look, that makes it all worthwhile. Like if smart, talented people like yourself get something out of that, like, and it made, then to me that it was worth it. Because again, like as when you're making something, or I feel this way, like when you're making something, unless it's one of those rare circumstances where like everything is like going perfectly, you walk away from a movie saying, wow, this could have been better, or this was out of my hands, or, I fucked this up, or this was okay, whatever. It's rarely like, oh yeah, it's perfect. And I know everyone's going to love it. You just kind of like, sometimes I'm embarrassed of certain things. But then when I hear like, oh, you guys like enjoyed it, then I'm like, all right. So then it wasn't that bad. It was like, I'm glad, but there's weird, again, like just, you might be interested, like if you've seen the movie enough, then you'll start to notice things that like drive me crazy, like that are directly politically motivated. Like, for example, anytime the sandstorm comes in, and starts picking people up. So I I had a whole sort of day that was dedicated to putting stunt people on wires and flying them against green screen so I could get people getting sucked up into the sandstorm. So there are various shots of people sort of swirling and getting sucked up, right? That was part of the deal. When we were getting into editing and when I finally delivered my cut, as you probably know, when a director turns over a cut for a TV movie, generally that's it. Like you've done your cut and now the producers can kind of come in and do whatever they want, or the network can come in and do whatever they want. And when I finally saw the final version of the movie, there's a scene where it's cutting to the sandstorm, sucking all these people up around the pool. And then it just cuts to a shot of a tent with nothing happening. It's like person screaming, screaming, screaming. Then there's a shot of a tent, like a 2-second shot of a tent. And then it cuts away. And I'm like, what happened? I had shot a very specific stunt person getting sucked up, and the tent was just a plate, a background plate. So you see this person and these executives and the producers of the movie got into this debate about, well, this sandstorm would never suck somebody up like that. That movement was that physically couldn't happen, like in a movie like this. So their solution was to take this badass fucking stunt and remove it and just leave the plate there, because in their head, oh, like a supernatural sandstorm would never cause somebody to do like that kind of thing. So like it drives me crazy because it's like this idiot reaction to something that only makes the movie worse. And it's like nonsensical, but that's like very much like what you end up dealing with sometimes in various forms. Like now when you see the movie, probably the shot goes by and you don't even think about it because you're just watching the movie. But as the maker, all you can think about is, hey, I spent like 2 hours when the stunt person busted their ass and it looked cool. And then some idiot executive goes, no, that doesn't, take that away. And because you don't have the control that you do have as an independent film, when you're an independent filmmaker, you have to sit there and go, okay, I've been paid, I did what I could, but it's still sort of, it sticks with you because you're like, you guys messed with it and it didn't have to be that way. Even down to the color, like, I take pains and like color, like you do anything, you color correct to make it look like what you want it to look like. And a senior executive at Sci-Fi came in at the last minute and says, I want the movie to be washed out. And I was like, what do you mean? And like, well, we should give it's the desert, so let's make it all like glary, like you're like. I said, but no, this is actually a very high contrast movie. It's supposed to look like movies from the 70s, and that's how we shot it, and that's how it's and I lost that battle. And they were like, no. And it was almost like somebody went into your television, just turned the brightness up, and you can't do anything about it. Like you can't. Mm-hmm. So in the grand scheme of things, as an audience member, you don't. Hopefully, they don't ruin the whole movie for the viewer. But all I keep thinking is these are things that would have made the movie a little bit better, and you didn't have to do that. You know what I mean? Like you didn't have to mess with it that way. I think so.
You're just kind of thinking too far into it. It's like
I know it's like okay, so you know how an Egyptian curse works,
okay. Right? That's the logic. It's like, what do you mean? Like I literally, it was like they were literally arguing that wouldn't happen. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, what wouldn't happen is an Egyptian curse would like turn into a snake and blah blah. That's what wouldn't happen. Not this other thing that you've decided wouldn't happen. So, my wife always says to me, that I'm always complaining that I never get like the budgets that some of my friends who make huge movies make. But then she's also very quick to point out, truthfully, she goes, but Jack, you would go crazy because the monkeying that goes on at that level when there's that much money, it's like you're barely directing because all these other people are just coming in and just touching it, and it's like, well, then who's really making the movie? You're really just this like, you become a much smaller force, So independent filmmakers actually, we're always complaining about no time and no money, but what we do usually get in return is just some greater measure of control, which in the end is all that really matters.
Yeah.
If you're an artist, that's the only thing that matters, really, you know.
And you're lucky enough to where like you said, your unique blend of like mixing things together and like, you know, just what you offer as a filmmaker is in most of your projects, like you said, except for when you're dealing with, you know, the corporate side of it and things like that, it really shows through.
It even shows through in the more, you know,
Yeah,
like,
and it does show through in the more
like
in the more Hollywood, like, you know, like
Las Vegas,
Right.
and
Mega
yeah,
Shark,
you know,
Well, that's gratifying because, you know, again, it's like because it's in those circumstances, if anything is sort of getting through that sort of that obstacle course that everybody who works in the business in that at any kind of level when you're dealing with executives has to negotiate, then that's good to know. Because what I end up sometimes, you know, it's like I'm like a baby. I'm still whining about it to you now. I'm like, they took away my shot. So it's like so it's nice to know that some of that stuff just manages to get through anyway.
yeah, I can imagine, man. Like, you know, you're probably left with a little bit of a bitter taste in your mouth because you got this
For some of them, yeah, for some, well, you know, like it's that's also my problem, you know, my own personal problem with just the way things are. You know, as my wife often says, like life on life's terms, and like I never really wanted to accept that that's really the trade, you know, in many ways when you work for the man, and if you're being well paid, then guess what? It's not your money, and you don't get to, you know, you can fight, but at the end of the day, it's not your right to have it your way. And I guess I never really was entirely comfortable with that. It just didn't seem like, you know, I wasn't okay with that. But that's the way it works, you know,
Yeah.
unless you're paying for it yourself. You know, that's just the law of the jungle, you know.
Being an auteur like you are and an artist above everything, I think like you can really get tripped up in that because it's like someone taking your baby away and just like, you know, doing what they want with it, like changing parts about it and just, you know,
like painting on a canvas and someone like, you know, coming in with their own brush
and just
being
like
that's exactly what it is. No, that's exactly what it is. But as you know, it's like that's like the history of Hollywood in terms of like working inside of the business.
nowadays,
You know,
one of the main things that's holding Hollywood back, you know, there's all these flops coming out, you know, it's because they're taking these movies away and the studios are, you know, changing them up or making them
it becomes a Franken movie.
Yeah, they're like
it is a Franken movie. It's exactly what it is. It's a Franken movie. It's and it's, you know, again, the thing is that a poor director, can't stand there in the audience, the theater, going, by the way, this wasn't my choice. They made me do this. Because at the end of the day, all you know as an audience member is, well, that director, it's got his name on it, so he must have like wanted it to be that way. So there are much bigger, you know, there are much worse horror stories, you know, that people know about like movies that were taken away and changed and all that shit. It's just, you know, it's very few directors get that sort of total control, you know, because you're dealing with so much money and so much fear. You know, people are afraid, so they lean towards conservative choices because they feel like that's going to be that there's more of a guarantee, and there's the guarantee of nothing, but there seems to be more insurance that maybe the movie will be successful if we don't rock the boat, and so all the weirdness starts to get shaved off, you know.
how many days did it take to shoot Las Vegas? Like,
I think Las Vegas probably was like, you know, might have been like 18 days or something like that, maybe 20. It might have been three 6 to 8 weeks and maybe a couple of pickup days. So I thought it was 20 altogether, something like that. So it's certainly better than like 12 days, you know. So you're still cooking, you know, you're still moving pretty fast. But yeah, it's, you know, that you have to be okay. You have to, you know, be ready to just be decisive and move fast when you're making any of these movies, because you just don't have a lot of time.
And with Las Vegas, you're working with all these actors like Brooke Ann Smith. We're really big fans of her. She was in a lot of stuff, growing teen stuff we grew up watching. And Summer Bichelle, we're really big fans of her. Another really famous indie actress. How was she to work with, Summer?
Summer was great. Yeah, I liked Summer. I didn't really know of her. I liked all the cast. They were really like all very pleasant and all super hardworking.
Walker was
Yeah.
nice.
A lot of young people, were they like partying behind the scenes or anything like
No,
that?
no, no, not that I could tell. I mean, we were in a casino,
Yeah, exactly.
so I think some of them, I think Andrew and Michael maybe were gambling. Maybe I would see them at the tables like after rap or something like that. But no, everybody, everyone was super professional, and I think the only time I ever see anybody cut loose is maybe at a rap party or something like that. But in general, you're working pretty hard and long hours, and you got to get up the next morning. So nobody wants to be like a hungover.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Oh
yeah.
man. Yeah.
What's like what's like so you said it was about 18 days. Is that like what's like the longest shoot you've done and like what's the shortest like
The irony is that the longest schedule, unless I'm mistaken, the longest schedule I've ever had was on The Big Empty, which was an independent movie, and it was just really well produced so that I had 24 days. So it's like, it's 4 6 day weeks. You basically on for 6 days, you're off one day and you come back. But when you get basically 24, the difference between 24 days and 18 days is a huge difference in terms of like just having another week. That means that everything that you do can just be a little bit more finessed,
Yeah.
you know? And that's really what it boils down to. It's like, it can just be a little bit more finesse, a little less rushed, one more take, one more chance to get the camera move right, an extra 15 minutes to get the lighting just that much better. And so it's a cumulative effect so that over the whole movie can take on another sort of dimension if you have that much time. And so I always thought that, since The Big Empty was like my second movie, that these schedules would actually get longer, and oddly they only ever got shorter. So I think the shortest was 12 for like Mega Shark or The Child, 666 The Child. They were both like 12-day shoots. And
That's
but
incredible.
you think about it, and the funny thing is, again, like, uh, not only were those movies shorter, much significantly shorter schedules, but again, the stories that are being told are much bigger in terms of scale stories. So that it doesn't make much sense. It's like, you can do Star Wars, but you have to do it in 12 days. Or you can do a movie about people sitting around talking, and that can be 20. So it's like it never made a lot of sense to me. But it just has to do with money. Like every day costs money. So if you can cut days, you save money. That's what they do. They just cut days.
Interesting. Yeah. So that last pull away shot, was that all CGI
in Las Vegas?
in Las
Yeah.
Vegas? That last
Yeah,
shot?
well, it was a combination. Like we were on a stage and we had built a section of the Eiffel Tower, that the sort of viewing platform. And so that was like a big sort of set that was on against a huge sort of green screen. And so what I did was I dollied back from Frankie essentially as far as I could go, as the stage would go, so that at least you get this feeling of, you can kind of feel the camera pulling back. It's not just like a digital, but at a certain point, since you're supposed to be pulling back across the entire city, after I went back, whatever it was, 30 feet, then that was the end of the dolly move, and then the digital, pullback took over.
It was epic, man. We love that shot.
Mhm.
Oh, cool.
And then he
Thanks.
says, "I love this crazy town," which
And it's a line that Barry Bostwick says earlier, so it has a little poetic note to
Right.
it.
Right. Those are things that I started putting, like, it's funny you mentioned the alliteration line. Like that's a line I wrote, I love this crazy town was another thing that I put in there. You try to just get in those things that are going to be, pleasing to you, like, oh yeah, okay, that's this, yeah, like you said, it kind of like all starts to fit together for you as you're making it. And you're like, so that's satisfying to hear that you guys, recognize that.
Well, going back to Big Empty, we've been saying to each other the last few weeks, it's intangible, like over.
Right.
I use that word a lot in the movie, so we thought that was funny. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, that's a great line from Jim. Definitely. Yeah.
He didn't want to really explain his motivation, so he just says, "Oh, it's intangible."
Right. Yeah. Well, that's kind of what they throw out to him. Like they keep, that's the whole thing, is like he's trying to understand this like perfect bond, something that he doesn't have, and all they can say is that what's between Peter and Jane is intangible. You know, you can't even touch it, and he's like using that like, yeah, it's intangible. Of course, it's intangible. Like you can't explain it. Like, yeah, yeah. Well, and look, anything that resonates, I think, is like super gratifying as a filmmaker. Like if you remember a shot or a line or whatever, that means that it didn't just like evaporate like a lot of movies do. Like we would, you know, my wife and I went to see like the Mission Impossible movie just to get out of the heat the other day. And I like some of the Mission Impossible movies. They're fun. And I looked at her just yesterday. I said, "Can you remember one scene from that 3-hour movie?" And I was like, we were both like, I can't even remember what we. And there's so many movies that are like that, where you walk out and you're like, I can't even remember what I just saw. And that's a tragedy, you know. That means like something is not working, like when you don't remember. So if you remember anything or something sticks, then hopefully that's a good, you've done something, hopefully. You know,
man, for sure. So Las Vegas, obviously very close to our hearts. It came, like I said, came out at the end of undergrad.
Yeah, it was a few years ago.
It just said everything. Like
I opened up a Christmas gift he got me.
A few years ago,
the DVD of that movie.
No way, you're kidding. That's awesome.
And just big eBay people.
We're still living in Memphis at the time, so we watched it there one night and just had a jolly old time.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I asked then. That's all I need. Then it was worth it. Yeah.
As a filmmaker, a lot of people get caught up thinking, "Oh, I gotta like all these certain movies to be taken serious as a filmmaker," and then I realize that being a filmmaker is liking every movie there is, liking every genre, taking whatever you
all
can,
ends of the spectrum,
picking whatever you can when you watch it and soaking it up like a sponge, or just appreciating it for what, like, you know, what you did behind the camera, polishing the script, everything. Like it could be like, I mean, it doesn't matter what the movie is. I look at it and I see what they were going for, and I know
you appreciate it. Yeah,
I've worked on sets of movies. We've worked locations. We've done the worst jobs on set. We've done some of the best jobs on set, and I think, you know, you think about all that when I watch a movie. I think about all the people.
Somebody else could have directed a movie like Las Vegas and just not, you know, taking it seriously or not giving it the care and credit it deserves when you're making it, and it wouldn't have been as nearly as good, you know. Yeah.
So
that's nice to hear. Yeah, you're right, and I do think there's a certain amount of snobbery that goes on when people talk about like essential cinema or whatever. And obviously there are other great movies and the great filmmakers that any filmmaker appreciates and seeks out, because, you know, to do that means that you're a real filmmaker who wants to benefit from great work. You know, like, you know, you'd be stupid not to watch the great stuff. On the other hand, there's all kinds of great stuff in genres, you know, in exploitation movies that you wouldn't, you know, that if you just dismissed out of hand and said, well, I don't watch those kind of movies because those aren't worth it, you would be also missing a lot of great filmmaking. So there's great film, great filmmaking is where you find it, and it can be, you know, in some of the weirdest, you know, most ultra low budget, you know, corners of cinema. So I always tell students to not, like, some people are like, well, I don't like Westerns. So it's like, well, yeah, but if you just like say, I'm not going to watch a Western, that means you're not going to watch like The Wild Bunch. You're not going to be exposed to Sam Peckinpah. You're not going to, you know, you're not going to benefit from like the power of that kind of filmmaking. So you kind of have to be open to really benefit from all that's out there. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. And
with the internet, everybody tries to read reviews a lot. Like, oh,
everybody thinks they're like a movie reviewer. And like I said, I've never been a fan of movie reviewers anyway. Unless it was like Ebert when he actually liked a movie. Those are always fun.
Because I don't always agree with Ebert, but I definitely appreciate a lot of his opinions. Yeah. And some of his stuff is just funny to read.
Right. Well, that was the other thing. I think, you know, Ebert was a writer.
Yeah.
There are certain critics that are like, you know, like Pauline Kael and Roger Ebert, who were just like fun to read just because they were writers. So, you know, and I agree, like there are no critics where I was like, where I'm like 100%, like everything that they say is great, I think is great. You know, it's like, because it's all subjective. But you're right, with social media, everybody feels that they can just say whatever they want, even if they have absolutely no. Well, I mean, everyone's entitled to an opinion, but it's amazing how, like, you know, what's the right word? Just committed and almost with great authority and confidence, some people say shit. You know, even when they have no real understanding, they'll just say it anyway, because they have a forum.
The work that went into it, but like Ernst said, he said nowadays everybody has an opinion, and 9 times out of 10, it's a bad opinion.
Right, right. Well, yeah. Well, I think about it. It's just like like until social media, people were like screaming into the void. Now, people some of the worst people have a forum. I mean, that's the problems. Like wonderful things can come out on social media, and you can see all kinds of beautiful things, but then you also have to take the equal amounts, sometimes greater amounts of just venom, and just hate that comes out too, so.
And people, it gets them more attention when they're being negative.
I think
they think, like, especially with review, or just somebody talking about something online.
And I think I say we just go back because we want to like your
this
journey,
colossal interview. Yeah, we've covered
your journey
covered
as,
so much good
as
stuff.
a filmmaker to director. Like you could go back to when you started doing like the making ofs, and I think that was a really good springboard for you as a filmmaker. Like, we worked on this movie Brian Banks that Tom Shadyac directed. It was like 2017, and like we jumped in on locations, which is a whole other story. I'll work locations, but I mean it's just so we're on locations, and then we find out the director Tom Shadyac wanted us to do the making of for the movie, and like wow. Now we can't.
We sent him an email because he moved to Memphis, Tom Shadyac, after he kind of retired as a director, and we hung out with him at a few events.
And then we found out he wanted us to do the making of, and
so I sent him an email like, definitely get us a job or throw something our way if you can, on this movie, because we'd love to work with you and all this stuff.
We'd seen him around school and stuff.
And it was in Memphis. Everybody knows each other. And
right.
And then we're like, no.
Then we got brought on to locations by somebody else, and then he's like, then we hear, he wanted you guys to do the making of, and I'm like,
we're like, nah.
And
I always.
But they had some other guy doing the making of, and they didn't even put it on the Blu-ray. I don't even know if it ever got released.
Yeah.
So
when you said
that's too bad. Yeah, you guys would be perfect for that. I think
I made sure they put that on the Blu-ray.
Yeah, and like you go back to Peyton Reed.
It was a great way to start out because you saw all these big, huge. You saw,
and then Peyton Reed,
Flintstones. You saw like
John Schultz. You did all those. You said because I remember Peyton Reed did Forrest Gump because on the on the Bring It On DVD, they're like, he got his start doing the Forrest Gump making of, which was
well, but like I said, it was like this sort of group of people, like like my Sean Maurer, who again shot The Big Empty and The Cucaracha and The Brady Bunch and Some Guy. He shot Bring It On, but before that, he went with Peyton. Or no, did Schultz go to? No, he went with Peyton to do the Forrest Gump behind the scenes. So he shot the behind the scenes, and he also went with Schultz, who did the behind the scenes on Jurassic Park, to Hawaii.
And then you did
so there was there were all these. We were all sort of working on different, but together, and basically in the capacities that we would do later in our own films, but just doing these making ofs. And you're right, they were just like really
good springboard for you guys. And
it was like in prior to, like, the only thing I had ever heard as a springboard for being a director. I mean, I never got into commercials and stuff like that. It's like that's its own world. I mean, even though I've done a couple of them, that's like there are a lot of directors that kind of go through advertising and become huge commercial directors, and then like use that. That wasn't my path, but my path was also what I wanted it to be, was really the Corman path. When I had heard about everybody from Scorsese and Bogdanovich and Coppola and Ron Howard, and everybody ever heard Jonathan Demme and Joe Dante, and they all made movies for Roger Corman sort of as their first step to getting a bigger movie. And Corman, even though that was going on, he was doing that in the 90s when I was coming in. It wasn't the same world, and in many ways it was harder to kind of even get in there as a young filmmaker. So that opportunity wasn't, even though I thought that would have been ideal, didn't present itself. So I was really lucky to kind of get in this kind of weird specific making of company, mostly because we had all this experience watching other directors work.
Yeah.
But also we got to meet each other, like all the people, like everybody who was working on those shows ended up helping each other in their own work later down the road, and I even like directed the second unit for John Schultz for Like Mike. Like I directed the big chase scene in Like Mike with
when we were 12 years old,
Yeah, we
we
saw that.
drove to our mom's car broke down on the way to the theater in 100-degree weather.
Yeah,
But
in July of 2002. Yeah,
we were able to get like someone to come help us, or like her friend or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
and we made it to Mike, and we saw that.
we
in the
saw
theater.
like Mike.
I brought my
yeah.
Pee Wee Herman doll in the theater with me, and he sat
Awesome.
in the
Yeah, we
seat.
just got
That's
that.
all. Well, the chase through MacArthur Park where they're on the scooters, and
Yes.
that's Jim, by the way, from The Big Empty and La Cucaracha. He's the bad guy in the car. Jim McManus is chasing.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's Jim McManus and Crispin Glover are the two bad guys,
Oh my
and
God.
Jim is driving. So I directed that whole scene where the car goes into the lake and all that stuff, and that's because John was like needed somebody he could trust to direct that while he was directing the other scenes of the movie. So so it was this weird sort of like people all working on each other's stuff, which is pretty common. You start to hear that. Like I was just looking at a thing on the Coen brothers talking about when they were basically shooting demo stuff for Blood Simple, and they had come off of working for Sam Raimi they were working on Evil Dead, and when you think about it, it's like it doesn't make a lot of sense. But yeah, everybody sort of like, and then like when they did the Hudsucker Proxy, they asked Sam Raimi to direct the second unit, even though he was already a big director on the Hudsucker Proxy. So it's like if you meet people when you're coming up and you like working with them, then you can keep working with them. That's often what happens. So I was very lucky. Again, just like most of things that happen in show business, it was completely accidental that I even wound up at that company, because when I came to LA, I didn't know anybody, but I had met a lawyer in New York who said, "Oh, I do some legal work for this company."
Nice.
So I know them, and it was just random, So that was the one place that I was like, and then it just so happened that the owner liked America's Deadliest Home Video and thought that they could maybe make a series out of it, and it all kind of went from there.
They knew, they knew you went to NYU. They knew you were this fresh, like up and comer. So they probably.
I guess so, but truthfully, like that kind of stuff, even though that carries a little bit of water, like it's so much of it just has to do with whether when you meet somebody, whether you like connect, you know how it is, like do you guys get along? Or in most cases, and I say this to students too, it's like the only way you get in anywhere is when somebody thinks they can profit off of you. Like it's hardly ever, "Oh, you're super talented, so I want to help you."
Mm-hmm.
It's usually like, what you have is going to make me money, or the script you have, or whatever you're selling, or whatever your idea is something that I can use to help me advance. So even though like the owner of ZM Productions, where I did all this tons of work, and then reality shows later in Temptation Island, all that stuff came out of that company. Initially, my entree into that, the reason why the owner said, "Oh, give Jack some behind the scenes work," is because he had seen America's Deadliest and thought he could spin that off into a TV series that he could produce. And so it was like it's like a wash. It's like, well, I'll keep you alive with these behind the scenes gigs. You give me this idea that we can like work together. It's like that kind of thing. So there's always this slightly mercenary, thing going on. But then you meet people like Kevin or, whatever, where you're like, oh, through this weird sort of happenstance, you make connections, and then you can have a very, fulfilling creative experience from time to time, which I've been very lucky, to have.
Yeah.
So,
and, it shines through with your films because, like I said, you were there to do those like really, in-depth making ofs with,
you learned a lot seeing all that
I mean,
stuff.
yeah, seeing how it all comes together, like on set with the actors.
The
I mean,
Walker Texas
production.
Ranger one, like we found like a link on YouTube that was really cool. It's like it's got like some I don't know, we told you about this. It's got some Japanese.
Yeah. Well, but the other thing that's interesting too, and I think this is important, maybe we talked about it. I think we talked a little bit about this, is that what I did take away from being on all those sets was that when it really came down to it, there was very little difference between making a student film and making a huge Hollywood movie. It was just the size of the thing, like it really was the size. And that's, sometimes that size can be overwhelming. Like the first time I walked onto a sound stage, like a proper sound stage, was when I was doing Hercules. And I walked into like these sets in New Zealand where they had these huge, palace sets and mountain sets, and it was like what you have in your mind as wow, this is what a movie studio is like, with all this like production design and stuff. and you know, even as a 20-something-year-old, I walked in there and I was like a little kid. I was like, wow. And I was already like hired as a director. I was like, wow, this is like amazing. But then you realize it's kind of like when you really get down to it, it really still is this very small number. It's you and the actors and the DP, you know, like you're just making the movie. And I think that's a good thing to remember, because it's scale is cool, but the filmmaking part is essentially the same no matter how big or small the movie is. It's not much different. You get better. Like I got better at directing actors. I got better at blocking actors. And even though I saw directors doing stuff that I was like, oh yeah, that's an interesting thing. Truthfully, the way you improve as a filmmaker is just by each time you get a chance to make a movie, or each time you make anything, you just get a little bit better, you know, like through the process of doing it. That's the other thing. It's like, you know, it's like, and that's why film school I think is good. It's not necessary, but it's a good thing because it forces you to work a lot, you know, through assignments. Like you have to shoot something.
I know.
So,
Yeah, and they started us out with like 16 millimeter, you know, I mean, cutting literally with razor blades, and then
right.
Sprocket tapes,
tape, and that was fun. I'm sure you did the same thing. We used we used the same ones they used in Vietnam, I think.
Yeah.
And
That's cool that you guys were actually still able to shoot on film and cut film. Yeah.
I heard we were one of the last classes to do it.
Probably, yeah. There's very little of that now. So yeah, you were probably some of the last students to actually get your hands on that stuff. Yeah.
Professors, I think most of our professors retired after that, so yeah, they're probably not doing more. And they'd have to send it off to Boston to get.
That's right. You got to find the one lab that'll process it, you know, because they used to be every city had labs, and it's like you have to mail it away, you know, and yeah, but you know, I think that's, you know, like I think when you work in sort of the analog form of the medium, you also understand, like even if you work digitally from then on, you understand like everything digital is basically an interpretation of what the form was. It's like
the names.
It's like looking at if you know how to tell, like it's like looking at a clock. Sometimes I hear it every once in a while, somebody will say like, I don't know how to tell time, because they only learn time from the digital watch. So you know what 256 means, but you don't know what does that really relate to, you know, like where does that come from, you know? So it's the same thing with film, you know, understanding, and just the form itself is just a beautiful, you know, film is a beautiful medium, you know, to work in. You can,
like, you know, your career really shows that. I just think, like, you know, as you went farther along in your career, you know, I'm sure you learned things, and you know, because I mean, I'm sure you learn something every day on set, and
always you learn, always, even things that you don't think you're going to learn, you know, like you know, like I think I've said, you know, like even when I did something like Temptation Island, it was at a time when I had already made a couple movies, and I was kind of like bummed, because I was like, really, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm doing for work, this is these stupid singles on an island, like what am I doing? But because it was a big TV show, they had money for like grip equipment, and they had a huge crane. And it was the first time that I got a chance to like work with a crane conceiving shots. And even though it was like dumb Temptation Island stuff, I learned how to work that fucking crane, so that like when it came time to do a crane shot in a movie that I cared about, like some guy who kills people, I knew that was the tool, and I knew what I could do with it, and I was able to. So like even in the moment, I wasn't thinking that. In the moment, I was just whining that I was like making this dumb TV show when I should be making a movie. But later I realized, oh no, actually you were learning, and now you can apply that. And that always happens. Even on the worst movie experiences, you learn something, even though it sounds like a cliche. That is absolutely true. That's why, like, I always feel like I say, like even if somebody asks me to like film something, like, can you shoot my, you know, birthday party or something, you know, it's like if I shoot something on my phone and put it onto my laptop and cut it together, that process of just filming something as seemingly, you know, not trivial because it's somebody's birthday party, but it's not a feature film, but by shooting and cutting, you always are getting better, you know, whatever you do, no matter what you do. So I think that's a really important thing. Also, it's important, particularly when you get out of school, because you spend most of your time just like waiting to do stuff. You forget to make stuff. and you end up just kind of like it's like not working out. It's like you used to go to the gym all the time. Now you're not going at all. And so shooting and cutting anything is healthy. It's good for your brain. It's good for your brain as a filmmaker, to keep doing that.
Get creative muscle in any way you can. I mean,
always. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That being said, any new projects on the pipeline for you? Working on anything?
Yeah, I think everybody, I'm no different from any director who always has like a project that they want to get made.
Yeah.
There's a movie called Search and Rescue that I've been trying to make for years, which is sort of my attempt to blend sort of love of film noir and the thriller movie. In many ways, kind of like almost like a 70s conspiracy thriller movie, and in a way, actually returning to the private eye sort of genre that I was fooling with in The Big Empty, taking that kind of stuff and merging it with more directly with an animal rights sort of storyline, which is politically something that we talked about, that I'm always kind of like peppering in, and I was trying to find a way of like putting those things together if possible. So I wrote a script a few years ago that I'm literally like in between our Zooms, I'm still like tinkering with. And I think I may have a chance to make it now through the company that's distributing the Blu-ray releases of America's Deadliest and Some Guy. But I have to make it for like this much, and it isn't like two guys in a room. It's not that kind of movie, which would be good to make for this much. It's like it's a thriller. So I'm trying not to think too hard about like how silly or how ridiculous that concept is. I'm more optimistic about like, hey, there may actually be a way to make this thing, no matter how small the budget. And so I'm excited about that. So that's really what I'm sort of working on right now. There's another bigger horror movie, a kind of like like all I can really say about it is it's a period horror movie. Okay. I can't say exactly what period, but it's a movie that I'm working with a writer up here in Portland that we have interest from a lot of interesting cast people. Like a lot of people are interested in being a part of it, but it's kind of like it's now because of the strikes and all that stuff. It's in that sort of no man's land, like until all that stuff gets settled. And that'll be a little bit more complex project because it's a bigger budget.
Yeah.
So I'm always like, again, I always kind of like get more excited about the time, even though I'm like afraid, like, oh wow, this is really so much little money, because it seems like that's more likely, in a way, that's going to happen sooner. Like I don't know why I just think it's like, and also probably because of what we talked about, it means that I can do something without worrying about somebody coming in and changing it all. That's the other thing that's the thing that gets me most excited. It's like the possibility of actually making it, and also the fact that maybe I can like
your stamp on it, like
get more of what's in my head on there without like having to like jump through hoops. So that sort of remains my my attitude. And look, and there are times where I'm just like, like bummed, like, this is never going to happen, or this is taking forever. Or, I used to joke, and I maybe even said this, if I did, I'm sorry. It's like, I end up making a movie 5 years after the time I was actually ready to do it. Like, it's always like, I need to make it, like, I'm going to make this thing now. And then like 5 years later, I'm making it. So there's always this long delay, seemingly. And it's been that amount of time since I almost made this movie, Search and Rescue. And it almost happened, and then it kind of fell apart before the pandemic. And now enough time has passed. I think I'm at that 5 year point, where like, okay, now it's probably, now it's time, to make something. But I'm just happy to be still making stuff when I can,
Yeah.
I'm sure it's hard to balance that with being a professor and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's and sometimes it's like hard, financially it's very hard, like it's just like, you certainly don't make a ton of money making independent movies. And as a teacher, as rewarding as that is, that's also not like that's not like a big money maker either. So, but those are the two things I know how to do. And I'll just keep doing them as long as they'll let me. So that's the goal. Yeah.
Please do.
So now you guys now this when did you start the documentary? When did you guys start the documentary?
Well, it's been like a year. We've been going on kind of for years. We knew we were going to do it, like, but when we had like, a lot of it planned out as far as like the outline and like locations we were going to do,
talk about,
what we wanted to talk about, and it took a while to get all the photos together.
It's a short. It was actually first cut was about 30 minutes, but the festival. We wanted to cut it down to something more just festival friendly, so it's about 12 minutes now. And
okay,
we focused on a lot more stuff, but now we're just focusing on just her in the center in this version and how it came about and why.
And then we got to bring her back to the actual location where the center was, and that's
wow, that's really cool. That's powerful. Well, I mean, whenever you guys can, comfortable, send me a link because I want to see it.
We'll have to send you a link to the one we did last year. It's a Saving Lit Creek. We grew
up. It's an environmental piece.
We grew up.
Cool.
Yeah, we grew up on a creek that they're trying to put an illegal sewage treatment plant.
Oh no!
So we did
they're trying to do it legally, but they're probably doing a lot of stuff that's illegal to make it happen.
And
just and it's in a creek that it feeds into a river that a lot of people get their water from.
And we actually got an article about us in the Tennessean, which is like the Tennessee's paper here.
Yeah.
And it was funny because they didn't tell us when they released it. So just
some guy interviewed us and we're like, when are you gonna?
We just got like a DM on Instagram and they're like, hey, did you guys know this came out like a month ago?
Yeah, the organization, the Saving Lit Creek organization, give them a follow. Saving Lit Creek.
Yeah, Save Lit Creek.
Everybody. Yeah, so they were the ones who let us know. They actually ran the article about the video and that played in the festival.
And right on. That's great. That's great.
Send you that. We know you'll probably appreciate that.
Oh, definitely want to see it. Definitely.
Such big fans of you, like watching your movies. Like they said, they're like a masterclass in filmmaking.
And then just hearing you talk about it, you're a professor, so you're really good at just we're learning a lot from this.
And
well, I'm glad. I'm glad. It's like it's like as my wife said, it's like this huge, this what you've allowed is this incredible ego boost, for me. And if you guys get something or getting something out of this, then that's even. That's better than it's just me going, talking about how it's just me talking about me. But I'm glad you guys, you're fellow filmmakers. So I mean, it's just shop talk, so it's easy to talk to you guys about it because you guys are filmmakers. So
you grew up watching.
Oh yeah, I mean, you got a great story. It needs to be told. So yeah.
I can't. I mean, I've never had a biographer, like you guys. So that's like a huge honor for me. So
we're immensely honored to be able to do so.
I think once we're done today, we're just going to throw on Blast Vegas and have a good time.
Yeah, it's like I should find some. I have some behind the scenes. I know what you're talking about when they shot some behind the scenes of the. That day when we were shooting that van scene where we threw the showgirl onto the windshield, and then Barry improvised something at that moment because he calls out her name. I can't remember. He says like Donna or something. There's a moment where I can't remember it's funny because I saw how many times I did it, but yeah, when the showgirl bounces off the front windshield, and that she was a stunt woman, that we dropped off the front windshield. Barry actually screams out her name because he's been in this town this whole life. So of course he knows every showgirl. So he recognizes her as she bounces off the windshield.
But he's great at improvising. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Crazy.
Like I said, it's just been a surreal experience getting to interview you about your amazing career.
Look at all that. Yeah,
you're a director who. You know how to your perspective on the world and your gifts as an auteur.
It's collapsing.
And an artist.
There's Ernest right there.
Really
awesome.
I saw this behind the scenes clip on the making of it, the DVD. I don't know if you shot it, but they're practicing the woogie woogie wee thing.
And Rick Shankman is literally on camera, making them do choreography 5 minutes before they shoot the scene.
And then Rick Moranis, you said he was kind of weird with interviews behind the scenes. It turns to the camera, he's like, "Hey, you don't need to film me. Film those guys."
Yeah. Yeah. No, you guys are real students of all that stuff, which is awesome, and it's very flattering to know that you guys have been that interested in my career and that you've taken the time to watch everything, and that's a huge. I really appreciate that.
We really can't thank you enough for chipping out time. I know you're busy because with everything.
No. It's actually really helpful for me because it's like I said, it's been an opportunity to kind of. I've never honestly looked back at everything really look back at everything, and sort of in order. It's an interesting sort of therapeutic kind of process to kind of go back and
That means a lot.
well, it is a huge thing. It also helps because, I think as filmmakers, you just you're so focused on what's in front of you and sometimes how hard it is to get anything made, that you kind of forget to take time to appreciate the things that you have done. And what you've done has allowed me to think about like, oh yeah, I did do this and that, and like, stop whining. Like you've had like a lot of opportunities, and a lot of really great experiences, and very lucky. And I'm very lucky. And I think that's another thing that is important to be grateful in general, just to be grateful for the opportunities that you have had. And even on experiences where I'm bitching about, well, this executive fucked it up, or it was still an opportunity. It was like I was very lucky, to do all the things that I've done, no matter how difficult or low budget. So it's been a reminder, so that's like, I appreciate that.
It means well to us to hear that. And
Yeah,
like I said, you had an amazing career. You've worked with so many like amazing people. You've made some really amazing pieces of art. And
oh yeah,
like I said, I hate to have to like, because but
we're filmmakers. We love talking about.
I know, like
it's what we love doing more than anything in the world, talking about movies and just the process and all
I know,
this cool stuff.
And I know we could talk for like 20 years, but
well, we can keep talking. I mean, we can keep talking beyond this, and I look forward to that, because you are like, we're cut from the same cloth, like that's a rare thing. So yeah, I appreciate that. All right, guys. Well, listen, it's been a real genuine pleasure, and I'm very thankful to have been able to do this with you guys.
Thank you so much.
Best of luck, and thanks again. And
yeah, hit me up anytime. Okay.
Heck yeah.
Well, one last.
All right. Yeah.
We like to ask people to recommend a couple movies that they don't think get the recognition they deserve, and that people need to seek out and watch. So what's
yeah. Well, that's interesting. Well, and I'm trying to think of movies that maybe don't have the recognition. I think that's a really good question, because a lot of times I think about, I think about some of my own films and think, wow, has anybody seen these? One that is a favorite of mine is a movie called Miracle Mile, directed by Steve Desjarnais. Have you guys heard of this movie?
Sounds
so Miracle Mile, funny enough, the reason I know about it is because I remember it was reviewed as kind of like a sleeper, like at the movies. I think Ebert was like, this is like a movie that nobody's really talking about, but needs to be seen. Miracle Mile is with Anthony Edwards, and it's a thriller, and it's really about a guy who is like a musician in LA to do a performance, and he gets a phone call that essentially says that the world is about to end. He accidentally picks up a payphone, and he gets a call that's meant to be like going to a missile silo. And basically it's a warning that like rockets are on their way, and in 12 hours, like the world's going to end. And it's what happens in that time. And it's like getting a call in the middle of the night, knowing that the world's going to end. What happens? And talk about a mix of black humor and like brutality and and real like emotion and romance, and all these things are in this one movie that actually had a pretty big, it wasn't like a tiny budget. It was like several $1 million, but not a lot of people saw that. So Miracle Mile comes to mind right away. Yeah, so that's one I would throw out there, just to see if you're curious. That one's super cool.
Oh yeah.
And I was just talking about watching Sorcerer again. Sorcerer is like a huge movie, but again, nobody saw Sorcerer when it came out, even though it was like financed by 2 studios and William Friedkin made it. That movie is like, you guys have seen Sorcerer, right?
I'm sure I've seen it.
Oh no, you got to see. Then Sorcerer is 1977. Roy Scheider. It's basically the.
Oh no! I have seen that one. That's the one where they go on the bridge, right?
Yes, that's right. It's the remake of Wages of Fear, right? It's the trucks of nitroglycerin.
Is that he followed The Exorcist with like that movie? They're like,
right. So that's a movie that because my father was in the insurance business, and his company insured that movie. And when I was a kid, I had the poster for Sorcerer, even though I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And the poster is that bridge shot, you know. And I remember it used to hang over my bed, and I would like stare at it, like, "What is this fucking thing?" And I got a chance to see it screened at the Turner Classic Movie Festival a few years ago, and Friedkin introduced it. So I got to see it on this huge screen, and it really is like this like, hypnotic, you know, adventure film, like just totally unique. So on a huge scale, I would say Sorcerer, and then on a slightly smaller scale, I would say Miracle Mile. And I'm sure there's a million that I'm not thinking of, but that's what comes to mind.
More recognition.
Hell yeah, man. Those
but
are
everybody,
great.
if you haven't watched enough of Jack's Perez's movies, watch them. They're awesome.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Will change your life.
Yeah. We'll be in touch. And here, pound.
Yep, we always
Absolutely.
do.
Absolutely. Yep.
Right.
Awesome.
Man,
Later,
take
dude.
care.
All right. See you guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.